Sometimes, you don't know you are holding your breath until something finally lets you exhale. That's what this is. Not a video, a release. A place where no one is waiting for your answers. Where no one minds if you fall asleep halfway through a sentence. Where even silence has arms. Welcome to noble silence. You don't have to explain how you got here. You're here, and that is enough. If the stillness you feel right now reminds you of something sacred, something you didn't know you missed, you are gently invited to subscribe, so that the next time you need this quiet, you won't have to go looking for it. It will already be here waiting with the lights on. And if you'd like to light the path for someone else, leave a whisper below. Tell us where in the world you're listening from tonight, because in the dark, even one small lantern can feel like a friend. Now, let's begin not with effort, but with soft return. You've been walking long, and not just with your feet. You've been carrying what no one could see, the invisible weight of old names, unfinished stories, breaths held too long for apologies that never came. But this is not a night for remembering. This is a night for soft forgetting. So come, not as someone who has to earn peace, but as someone who never lost it, only misplaced it beneath the noise of doing, of trying, of holding yourself accountable for the suffering of things long gone. You are not broken, only tired. Let the quiet find you now. Let it brush against your cheek like a warm cloth, not asking anything, not fixing anything, just being here like you. You are not late, you are not behind. You are not the echo of who you failed to become. You are breath, and breath does not carry a past. It just arrives, then leaves, then arrives again. That is your only task tonight. To return to the breath before the story, before the guilt, before the name. There is an incense burning in this quiet place. It is not here to cleanse you. You are already clean. It only rises to remind you how to let go. Watch it for a moment in your mind. Can you see it? A single curl spiraling upward, never asking where it came from or where it's going. It never argues with the air. It simply joins it. And maybe that is all forgiveness truly is. Not something granted, but something rejoined, like a breath you forgot you were allowed to take. Inhale. Feel that. The opening. Exhale. Feel that? The permission. That is enough. There was once a monk who asked his teacher, "What must I do to be free of my past?" The teacher said nothing. He simply picked up a bowl of water and poured it onto the earth. The monk watched, waiting. And the teacher finally said, "It has already been emptied." No judgment, no steps, no long journey. Just a letting go that already happened. If only we'd stop picking it back up. You do not need to chase forgiveness. You are already living in it. Like the sky that holds both thunder and stillness, nothing is outside of grace. But you've been told otherwise, that you must make it right, that you must carry shame until it softens. That sleep must be earned. And maybe tonight is the first night you are ready to ask, what if none of that was true? What if the breath before forgiveness is not about release, but about remembrance? What if nothing needs to be fixed? Because nothing was ever truly lost. Your regrets do not define your worth. They only reveal your depth. You are allowed to feel sorrow without becoming it. You are allowed to change without guilt for who you once were. This moment right here where your shoulders have dropped just slightly more than before, this is not the end of your healing. This is the beginning of your softness. You do not need to be lighter yet. You only need to be held. So let this stillness hold you now. Let it wrap around your edges, like dusk softening a harsh afternoon. No effort, no trying, just breath that asks for nothing in return. The second arrow, that's what the Buddha called it. Pain is real. That is the first arrow. But blame, shame, reliving the moment over and over. That is the second. And most of us are bleeding from wounds we kept alive ourselves. But what if tonight you stopped reaching for that second arrow? What if you let it fall? Not in defiance, but in mercy. Not because you are healed, but because you are human. And because forgiveness does not follow perfection, it precedes it. There is an image I want to leave with you tonight. It's not a teaching, just a picture you can return to when your thoughts grow sharp again. A small wooden temple, windows open to the wind, no doors to close. Just one candle burning beside a single, untouched teacup. No one arrives. No one explains. But the incense still curls. The breath still moves. And everything in that room is already enough. That is you. You are not waiting for forgiveness. You are the room where it already lives. You are not trying to fall asleep. You are the one sleep has already chosen to visit, not because you did everything right today, but because you're finally still enough to be found. So, if your thoughts return, let them pass like wind through the temple of your ribs. No judgment, no grasping. Just let them come and let them leave. There is nothing to fix. There is nothing to earn. And even if you hear no voice tonight, even if your body takes time to unwind, the work is already done. You came. You softened. You breathed. And that is enough. Let the incense rise. Let the second arrow stay on the ground. Let the breath before forgiveness be the one that holds you as you finally sleep. There is a room no one speaks of, not because it is forbidden, but because it is too quiet for most to remember. A temple hall with floors worn smooth by centuries of bare feet, walls that once echoed mantras now forgotten, and air so still that dust floats like prayer. No one visits now. The statues stand unbowed, the cushions remain empty, and the great doors they stay open, but only to the night. And yet, in the very center of that vast hall, on a stone pedestal barely the height of a bowl, burns a candle. Not a mighty flame, not a ceremonial torch, just a single narrow wick, its flame no larger than a child's breath. But it never goes out, not in wind, not in storm, not in the trembling of seasons or the forgetfulness of time. It simply stays. Some say a monk once lit it and then left. Others believe no one ever lit it, that it appeared when the silence became too deep, that it was not born of fire but of presence. No one truly knows. But what they do know is that the candle never fears the dark. Even when the moon disappears and clouds cover the stars, even when the walls groan in old age and shadows stretch across the altar, the candle does not flinch. It does not prove itself. It does not explain. It simply glows, and perhaps that is all it ever needed to do. You, too, have known silence, the heavy kind. Not the kind that comforts, but the kind that questions. The kind that wraps around your thoughts and asks, am I enough? Is anyone coming? Will I disappear in this? There are nights when your peace feels too small, when your healing feels delayed, when your strength feels like it's only pretending. And that is where we begin tonight. Not in power, but in flicker. Not in confidence, but in quiet, steady breath. You do not need to be a blazing sun to matter. You only need to stay lit. Not because the world is watching, but because the silence is. And the silence does not require perfection, only presence. There was once a novice monk who feared the dark, not in childhood, but in practice. Every evening, as the sun began to dip below the mountains, he would rush through his chores, eager to return to his room before the sky turned black. He told himself it was because he had early meditation, or that he needed to sleep. But in truth, he feared the vastness of the night. One day, his teacher noticed this pattern, and with no scolding, no lesson, he gave the monk a simple task. Tonight, light a single candle and sit with it in the center of the main hall. Stay until it teaches you something." The monk trembled, but he obeyed. That night, he entered the great hall as dusk swallowed the last line of light. He placed the candle on the floor, Saturday beside it, and waited. At first, his thoughts ran loud. What was that sound? Is someone watching me? Will the flame last? But slowly, the quiet became deeper than the fear. He noticed how the flame did not struggle against the dark, it welcomed it. Without resistance, without apology. It did not grow smaller, it simply stayed. And suddenly, he was no longer afraid. Because he was no longer trying to be something larger than the dark. He was simply with it, side by side. You don't need to conquer your fear tonight. You only need to stop arguing with it. Let it be here as a guest, not a master. Let it sit beside your flame and realize it cannot smother you. Not because you are stronger, but because you are still here. Flickering, yes, but lit, and in this temple, that is holy enough. Fear often dresses itself as preparation, as logic, as protection. But under its many robes, it always asks the same question: what if I'm not safe? And tonight, that question has no power here, because in this space you are not being tested, you are being trusted. To breathe, to be, to flicker gently without apology. No one is asking you to burn brighter. No one is asking you to banish your doubt. The flame does not shout to be seen. It simply stays visible. You are allowed to stay visible too, even if you feel small, even if you feel fragile. You are still a presence in this great hall of night. When the monk rose from the floor of the temple hours later, he looked around half expecting to see applause, a sign, some miracle of light. But there was only the candle, still burning, still quiet, and something in him knew that was enough. The teacher met him the next morning with no questions, just tea, and in the silence between their sips, the monk understood. Fear does not go away, it just loses its role. It becomes one of the many shadows in the room noticed, but no longer in command. There will be moments, maybe even tonight, when your thoughts return, when your body tightens, when you wonder if this peace will hold. And when it happens, don't resist, just breathe. As if you're a candle in a temple no one enters but which still deserves to be lit. As if your gentleness isn't something to grow out of, but something sacred to protect. As if your small, trembling peace is still peace, because it is. And it's enough. There's something strange that happens when we stop trying to explain the dark. It softens. Not because it changes, but because we do. We stop naming it as enemy. We stop fighting its shape. And when that happens, light becomes a companion instead of a weapon. The candle doesn't burn at the dark, it burns with it. The room does not become bright. It becomes honest, whole. Two things existing at once, stillness and flame. What if your healing looks like that? Not a sunrise, not a thunderclap, just a small, faithful light in the middle of what you once feared. Maybe the point was never to escape the dark. Maybe the point was to stay lit inside it. Like the candle that forgot to be afraid, and in forgetting became eternal. There is a silence. Only the candle understands. It is not the silence of emptiness, nor the silence of sleep. It is the silence of presence, the kind that watches, without needing to fix. The kind that sees your flicker and does not panic. The kind that knows you are not in danger. You are simply glowing inside something larger than your understanding. And that's okay. The monks say there are 3 kinds of bravery. The first is loud, it charges through. The second is strategic, it calculates, then moves with precision. But the third is the one no one sees. It's the quiet kind, the kind that stays, right where it is, even when no one watches, even when no one praises. The bravery of a candle that forgets to fear the dark, because it's too busy being light. That kind of courage isn't taught, it's remembered, and you are remembering it now, not as something you must perform, but as something you already are. Let the darkness be here. It's allowed. Let your breath be shallow, if that's what it is. Let your thoughts wander. Let your hands rest. You don't need to hold your posture to be worthy of peace. You just need to keep that small part of you willing to stay lit. That is enough. Maybe no one taught you how to love your own softness. Maybe they taught you that strength means silence, and fear means failure, and sleep is something you earn with exhaustion. But tonight, you know different, because here you are, still breathing, still open, still burning, even if barely, and that is sacred. Somewhere in the world, someone else is listening right now. A stranger you'll never meet, curled under a blanket, heart just as heavy, light just as dim, and maybe you are both candles, glowing quietly in your own halls, not trying to save each other, just refusing to go out. That too is connection. That too is prayer. That too is enough. Let the breath soften now, not because it's the end, but because nothing more is needed. You are not closing a chapter, you are staying open through the night. The flame does not say goodbye. It just keeps glowing while everything else falls asleep around it. So let the rest fall asleep. Let the thoughts, the stories, the memories drift into the corners. You stay as you are, untouched, still flickering, still whole. And tonight, you do not need to fear the dark, because you are no longer trying to be bigger than it. You are simply shining inside it, and that is holy. Let the candle burn, let the shadows be still. Let yourself be small and enough. Let sleep arrive without needing to be called. The night is already holding you. There is nothing else to do. No closing line, no final teaching. Only this, a flame, a breath, a stillness that forgot how to be afraid. There is pain, and then there is the story we wrap around it. The ache itself is real. The loss, the failure, the moment that pierced you, these are the first arrows, and they hurt. But the mind, so practiced in control, doesn't stop there. It pulls another arrow from the quiver and aims it at you. Not at the world, not at what happened, but at yourself. Why didn't I see it coming? Why do I always do this? Maybe I deserved it. That second arrow, it always finds the softest part of you. The part that's already curled inward. The part that needed mercy, but received more pain. And maybe that's the story you've been living. Not just the first wound, but the quiet war you've been waging against yourself ever since. There is an old teaching, a story passed from one monk to another for generations. A monk is struck by an arrow in the forest. The pain is sharp. The blood is real. But before help arrives, he begins to scream, not in agony but in blame. Why did I walk this path? Why was I not more aware? This is my fault. And then, as if the arrow weren't enough, he picks up a stone and strikes the wound himself. The teacher, hearing this, says gently, "The first arrow is pain, but the second, that one, you chose. You've suffered enough. There's no need to add more." And yet, how often have you picked up that second arrow? Not in anger, but in shame. In the quiet after something went wrong, when no one else was pointing fingers, but you. Maybe it came in the form of silence. Maybe it came as overthinking. Maybe it was the way you stopped allowing joy because you thought you hadn't earned it. That is the second arrow, and it's far more dangerous than the first. Pain is natural. It softens when it is seen, but blame hardens. It calcifies around the wound and says, "Until you explain this, you are not allowed to heal." But you are allowed, even if you never find the reason, even if it still hurts, even if part of you still thinks you could have prevented it. You are allowed to let the second arrow drop. You don't need to explain what hurt you to release what's hurting you now. Let the breath return, not deeply, just honestly. Let the shoulders fall. Let the gut unclench. You are not in the forest anymore, and you are no longer being pierced. You are being softened, unwound. Return to the part of you that remembers how to hold pain without punishing the one who feels it. There is a bowl of water in the mind of every meditator. When undisturbed, it reflects the moon. But when stirred by memory, by shame, by trying to understand too hard, the surface ripples, the image blurs, and the arrow, which once floated harmlessly at the top, begins to sink. What if you didn't stir tonight? What if you let the arrow stay on the surface, unjustified, unexplained, but no longer buried? You don't need to know why it happened to release the part of you that keeps reliving it. There is peace in not knowing. There is relief in not needing closure to begin closing. Let that part of you that always searches take a breath. Let that part of you that always blames take a night off. Let that part of you that keeps trying to be perfect realize this truth. The second arrow is never necessary. Only the breath is. And right now, you are allowed to have it, just as you are. The mind will try to convince you that blame equals responsibility, that punishing yourself is the same as becoming wiser. But that isn't wisdom. It's repetition, a loop. And loops don't heal, they just get tighter. So tonight, you are invited to loosen, not as an escape, but as a return. You are not abandoning your growth by releasing shame. You are allowing your growth to actually begin. Because when you're holding guilt in both hands, there's no room left to carry your healing. There was once a woman who came to a Zen master in great distress. "I made a terrible mistake," she said. "I cannot stop thinking about it." The master handed her a stone and asked her to carry it. She did. Then he handed her another, and another, and another, until her arms were full. "Now," he said softly, "walk to the edge of the garden and come back." She tried. She dropped one stone, then another. By the time she returned, her arms were nearly empty. "I couldn't carry them all," she said. "They kept falling." The master nodded. "And yet you still tried." He looked at the last stone in her hand. "You're allowed to set that one down too." And without instruction, she dropped it and wept. There is something inside you tonight that wants to drop the last stone. It doesn't need permission, only willingness. Let it go, not because you figured it out, but because it's too heavy to take into your dreams. Let it dissolve like an arrow in still water. Let the ripples fade. Let what once pierced you become something that no longer lives in your body. This is not forgetting. This is not denial. This is spiritual mercy. This is choosing to live instead of relive. And you're ready now. Not because you're perfect, but because you're tired. And because the silence has grown gentle enough to hold what you were never meant to carry alone. Let the breath return without expectation. Let the body soften without forcing stillness. Let the guilt dissolve without solving the past. That is what the second arrow steals: the chance to rest before you explain, the chance to feel before you process. But not tonight. Tonight, you are not an analysis. You are not a puzzle to be solved. You are a soul held in gentle rhythm, and rhythm does not ask why. It just moves, softly, onward. If the second arrow tries to return, let it pass like a thought you no longer believe. You do not have to fight it. You do not have to welcome it. You can simply watch it drift like fog that forgot what it was looking for. You are allowed to heal quietly, without explanation, without apology, without ceremony. And if you need an image to hold tonight, let it be this: a still bowl of water, one arrow, floating, not sinking, not bleeding, just there, not asking for anything. And in the moonlight, you begin to see the arrow no longer aims at you. It never did. It was your own hand that kept pointing it back inward. But your hand is open now, and your breath is deeper, and the moon is rising, and that is enough. Let the arrow float. Let the mind rest. Let the story loosen. You've suffered enough. No need to add more. There is a kind of silence that does not arrive in stillness but after breaking. It's the quiet that comes once the sound of shattering has passed, once the shock has subsided, once you've gathered the pieces and sat beside them without yet knowing what to do. You are here now, not whole but not ruined, and that's where this story begins. In the corner of a small temple, there was once a tea bowl used only during winter ceremonies. Its shape was ordinary, its glaze pale grey, a soft whisper against the lacquered tray. But over time, a crack appeared, small at first, then deep enough to divide the rim. The elder monk, who always prepared the tea with great care, held the broken bowl in his palms without flinching. Another monk asked, "Shall we replace it?" But the elder shook his head and said only, "It has cracked kindly." The others didn't understand. What kindness was there in a bowl no longer whole? What goodness in something that could no longer serve without risk of leaking? Still, the elder kept the bowl. And days later, when the kiln was hot and the silence long, he began to mend it. Not with glue, not with secrecy, but with gold. You may have heard this word before, kintsugi. The art of mending what is broken with something precious, not to hide the wound, but to highlight it, not to erase the damage, but to honor the survival. The gold doesn't pretend nothing happened. It says clearly, yes, this cracked, and yet it remains. That bowl, once plain, became radiant. The very line of its fracture glowed with warmth each time tea was poured, and the elder monk used it from then on only for guests who had suffered something they did not yet have words for. It became a silent companion to quiet grief. You too have cracks, maybe not visible, maybe not spoken of, but there, along the edges of your breath, in the places where you once held everything a little too tightly and something gave way. You may have blamed yourself for breaking. You may have told yourself it made you less worthy of being held, of being chosen, of being loved. But what if you're not broken? What if you've only been marked by the life you lived? And what if the lines you hide are not the end of your beauty but the beginning of it? There is no such thing as a bowl that's never been dropped, just as there is no such thing as a soul who made it through life without splintering at least once. But splintering is not failure. It is transformation. And tonight, you are not asked to pretend you never cracked. You are asked to honor the places where the light got in, to let your sorrow be golden, to let the warmth you carry now steam from the very seam that once made you flinch. Let the breath move now, not in resistance, but in recognition. You are not leaking. You are glowing. And no matter what the world told you, you are still a vessel for peace, still able to hold what is sacred, even if there is gold where pain once lived, especially if there is gold where pain once lived. Sometimes it is not the cracking that hurts the most, but the silence that follows it, the quiet withdrawal, the subtle shame, the feeling that if others saw the fracture, they would choose another bowl, a perfect one, an unbroken one that never failed to hold its shape. But you are not meant to live hidden in the cupboard. You were shaped to serve, to hold, to pour, to warm. And your cracks, they do not disqualify you. They deepen you. They are the very proof that you have carried something, that you dared to be filled, that you did not protect yourself so completely that nothing could touch you. And yes, you were touched, but you remained, and that is sacred. The elder monk once served tea to a traveler who had just lost everything. Not with words, not with comfort, just the cracked bowl, filled with steam, placed gently before him. The traveler stared at the line of gold threading the rim, and for the first time in weeks, his shoulders dropped. He didn't speak, he didn't cry, he only drank slowly, softly, as if what he held was not tea, but permission. Permission to not be whole in order to be worthy. That is what this night offers you. Not a fix, not a glue, but a gold thread of sacred presence running through the places you thought disqualified you. You don't need to be smooth to be beautiful. You don't need to be flawless to be poured into. You don't need to be sealed to be held. Let the breath move gently now. Let it fill your chest like warm tea filling a bowl that once broke and chose to remain. Let the exhale be the soft shimmer of gold settling into your seams. There is no ceremony required, just this quiet remembering. You are allowed to carry both the crack and the kindness. You are allowed to weep and still shine. You are allowed to be soft and still sacred. Not all wounds leave scars, but some do. And those that do deserve to glow, because the presence that healed them was not force, it was gentleness. The mending did not come through pressure, but patience, through warmth, through silence, through the slow, holy art of letting yourself be held without rushing to be fixed. That too is kintsugi. That too is spiritual practice. If you carry sorrow tonight, place it gently inside this image. A cracked bowl, mended not with shame but with reverence. Steam rising from its center, and no one rushing to explain how it was broken. Only the hush of being useful again, of being beautiful again, of being seen not in spite of the line, but because of it. Let that be your image now. Let that be your truth. Let that be your warmth. Sleep does not ask for perfection. It asks for surrender. It asks for stillness. And you have arrived, not uncracked, but kind, and that is enough. There is a kind of peace that does not come from knowing, but from moving anyway. A kind of freedom that is not earned through control, but through release. And tonight, you are allowed to let go of needing to know. There once was a bird born in the high branches of a tree that leaned over a cliff. The wind sang lullabies to her egg. The clouds whispered stories before she ever opened her eyes. When she did, all she saw was sky. No nest, no plan, only air. The elders taught her, when the time comes, fly where your wings take you. But what if I don't know where to go? She asked. What if I fly the wrong way? They only smiled. You can't. There's a question we carry like a stone in the chest. What if I'm lost, and beneath it, an even deeper fear? What if I was supposed to know by now? But tonight, those questions are allowed to melt. Because not all peace is planned, and not all flight has a map. The young bird did not feel ready. Her wings were small. Her chest trembled with the weight of wind. But the nest had become too tight, and one morning, before the sun had fully risen, she leapt, not out of bravery but because staying hurt more than leaving. She didn't know north from south, didn't know where the others had gone, didn't even know if she would land. But the wind caught her, not like a destination, like a cradle, and that was enough. Sometimes we fly not because we are sure, but because we have grown too large for what once held us. Sometimes we leap not because we trust the air, but because we can no longer fit inside the doubt. And even then, we are still guided. You've questioned your path. You've wondered if turning back would have been wiser. You've replayed old choices like scratched records, hoping for clearer sound. But tonight, let all that circling rest. You do not need to understand to be free. You only need to breathe like wings opening. You only need to exhale like a sky being made inside you. You are not lost. You are in flight. And the wind was never your enemy. It was always waiting to lift you. The bird flew for days without direction, sometimes gliding, sometimes faltering, sometimes resting on branches that shook beneath her weight. She didn't always feel safe, she didn't always feel wise, but she kept flying. And somewhere between the fear and the fatigue, she stopped looking for signs and started listening to the rhythm of her own wings. She had become the compass. And even when clouds covered the earth and the sky looked like a wall of grey, she kept moving, not because she saw, but because she trusted she would. You don't need a perfect sky to fly. You don't need all answers before you rest. You only need to let go of the idea that knowing equals safety. Sometimes, peace arrives not when you've figured it all out, but when you've stopped needing to. There are journeys that don't show you where they're going until you arrive. There are choices that look uncertain until they become peace in hindsight. And there are nights like this one when you realize that wandering wasn't a detour, it was the way. The bird eventually landed in a quiet meadow, ringed by soft trees, fed by a stream that sang like the wind she'd known in her earliest breath. She had not planned to arrive there, had not aimed, had not marked a map, and yet it felt right. Not because it was grand, not because it was final, but because it let her rest without needing to explain how she got there. She curled her feathers and slept not in triumph, but in relief. Because peace, when it finally arrives, doesn't always come with clarity. Sometimes it just feels like softness after too much flight. Let yourself feel that softness now. Not because your questions are answered, but because they don't need to be. Let your body loosen. Let your breath slow. Let your soul stop asking for proof. You are allowed to be here without direction. You are allowed to rest even if the map is still unfinished. There's a myth that guidance must feel clear, that intuition arrives like thunder or stars aligning. But often, it sounds like the faint flutter of your own heart saying, "This way, maybe," and maybe is enough. The monks say true freedom is not the absence of fear, but the absence of needing certainty. Because when you no longer demand that every step makes sense, you begin to move in rhythm with the mystery. You begin to trust the part of you that knows without knowing, that listens without asking, that flies without a reason other than, "I was meant to move." You are not late, you are not lost, you are simply in flight between moments of knowing, and the wind still holds you, even now, especially now. Tonight, you don't need to turn back. You don't need to figure out tomorrow. You don't need to land. You only need to feel that something inside you is already gliding toward peace. Not because you planned it, but because it's time. And when you sleep, may you sleep like wings folding gently in, not with answers, but with ease. Let your soul be the bird. Let your breath be the sky. Let the wind do what it always wanted to do, carry you. No direction, still guided. Not every thought is yours to keep. Not every feeling is a mirror. Some things pass through like weather. You don't need to hold the storm to learn from it. You don't need to name the wind to let it move. And you don't need to explain yourself to be allowed to rest. There was once a monk who sat in the garden even when it rained. Other monks would ask, "Shouldn't we wait for better weather?" And he would smile, lifting his face to the sky and say, "This too is practice." Whether the sky brought sun or thunder, he stayed still, not to prove a point, not to become stronger, just to remember that the sky never held on to what passed through it. It never judged the cloud. It never kept the lightning. It never wept for the storm. It just stayed sky. You, too, are allowed to remain unshaken, even when something inside you feels dark. You are not the cloud. You are the space through which it moves. And tonight, you are allowed to let it move on without needing to understand where it came from. Some feelings are heavy. Grief, irritation, longing. Some feel like they don't belong. Some linger too long. Some change their shape just when you thought you understood them. But none of them are wrong. None of them mean you're failing. None of them mean you are not peaceful just because they arrived. A cloudy sky is still a sky. There is a softness in this realization that your sadness is not a verdict, your anger is not a flaw, your fear is not a failure. These things come and they go, not because you forced them to, but because that is what they do. Even the heaviest cloud drifts eventually. Even the storm runs out of rain. Let the breath now move through you like wind through open windows. No force, no resistance, just permission. Let whatever you're feeling have space without giving it your name. You are not the anxious one. You are not too sensitive. You are not still broken. You are simply sky having weather, and the weather always clears. There's a quiet freedom in letting things pass without needing them to teach you something. Not every emotion is a message. Not every thought is a sign. Some are just echoes, ripples left by winds you don't remember. And that's okay. You don't have to dig for meaning in every moment that moves through you. You don't have to find a story in every feeling. Sometimes, the most healing thing is to let it rain without needing a reason why. There was once a young monk who came to his teacher in frustration. "I am angry," he said, "and I don't know why." The teacher handed him a mirror and said, "Now scream into it until the reflection explains itself." The monk stood there, confused, and the teacher only said, "That is what you are doing with your mind. You don't need to make every feeling justify its presence. You don't need to silence the cloud or study the rain. Let it come, let it be, let it leave. You are not required to hold on to what hurts just to prove you're spiritual. You are allowed to feel something and still be at peace. You are allowed to carry sadness and still be sacred. You are allowed to drift a while and still be guided. Let the thoughts pass. Let the tightness soften. Let the names you've given yourself fall like leaves in still air. You are not here to explain. You are here to breathe. And breathing is enough. If a cloud could speak, it would not apologize for being full. It would not rush to become blue sky again. It would float honest, slow, unashamed. Let your emotions do the same. Let them pass without performance. Let them arrive without punishment. Let them go without resistance. There is a cloud drifting now across your inner sky. You don't need to clear it. You don't need to capture it. Just watch. And remember, you were never the weather. You were always the sky. Some paths do not call your name. They do not flash with signs. They do not shout, "Come now." They wait, silently, patiently, like stone in the mist. You may pass them 100 times unready. You may forget them entirely, but they never move. They do not vanish. They do not wither from being ignored. They are not in a hurry for your healing. They simply remain. There is a bridge like this in the mountains. Worn stone, no railings. Just a single arch stretching across a quiet stream that sings only when the world is listening. It's not the kind of bridge you notice easily. It appears only in fog, only when the path is soft, only when you've grown too tired to keep running. Then, as if it had been waiting all along, you see it, and it does not ask, "Why did you take so long?" It only whispers, "I'm here." You are not late. You are not behind. You are not slow. You are walking toward the life that is ready for you, not the one you tried to rush into. And there is a bridge in front of you now that asks nothing but your presence, not your strength, not your certainty, not even your faith. Just your steps, as they are, tired, gentle, uncertain. They are enough. We are taught to make peace quickly, to cross the river of pain with straight posture, sharp answers, perfect timing. But the truth is, some crossings take longer. Some days, You need to stand at the edge and wait. Not to gather courage, but to soften fear. Not to take the leap, but to breathe. Even stone has patience. And the bridge you are on does not crumble just because you are slow. There was once a traveler who reached a river after many days of walking. He had been searching for clarity, but found only fog. No signs, no markers, just water ahead and the faint outline of something solid beneath mist. He hesitated. I don't know where this goes. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't even know who I am anymore. The bridge said nothing. It did not shine. It did not move. It did not answer. It just stayed. And somehow, in its stillness, he felt welcome. Not encouraged, not inspired, just allowed. And so, with no certainty, he crossed, one quiet step at a time. You may be standing at such a crossing now, not with drama, not with fear, just with the ache of wondering whether it's time to let something go and begin again. And the bridge will not tell you what to do. It will not decide for you. It will not push. But if you listen closely, you may feel it hum beneath your feet. A low rhythm of welcome, a sacred permission to move without rush. Let the breath be slow now. Let the body stay soft. There is nowhere else you need to be. The crossing will wait. The peace will not leave if you take your time. Even the fog knows when not to lift too quickly. Even the stone does not require certainty to carry your weight. You are not here to perform a crossing. You are here to be met by what was already waiting. There's a moment when the mind quiets not because it found the answer, but because it realized it doesn't need one. That moment is what the bridge was made for. Not resolution, but rest between stories. The traveler didn't rush. He paused at every step, listened to the stream beneath, let the fog touch his face like an old friend who asked no questions, and halfway across, he realized something strange. He hadn't planned the journey. He hadn't even known what he was searching for. But the bridge had been part of the path all along. It had simply waited for him to stop needing everything to make sense. Not all healing comes with a plan. Not all peace requires a map. Some clarity is shaped only in motion, only in the still walking, the breath-held crossing, the sacred slowness of not knowing and going anyway. And the bridge doesn't mind how long it takes. It was built for those who carry confusion as gently as faith. If tonight you feel uncertain, if the fog is thick, if your steps are hesitant, if your questions outnumber your answers, that's not failure. That's weather. And the bridge remains under it all. Let your breath walk now. Let your mind loosen. Let your pace match the rhythm of the mist. You don't need to rush to find peace. Peace will match your stride once you stop trying to earn it. There's something tender about bridges. They don't live in beginnings. They don't live in endings. They exist in between. And they remind us it's okay to be in between too. Not healed, not broken, not certain, not lost. Just here, just breathing, just crossing. At the far side of the bridge, the traveler did not shout, did not dance, did not feel reborn. He simply stepped onto solid earth and wept because he hadn't been asked to be anything but himself. No test, no transformation, just the gift of being allowed to arrive slowly. Let yourself arrive slowly too. Let the bridge hold you as long as you need. Let the fog stay if it wants to. You are not being timed. This is not a race. This is not a passage to prove your worth. This is not a performance for a watching world. It is a crossing between one breath and the next. And the bridge has always been here, waiting, not to change you, only to carry you. There is a place beyond effort, a quiet patch of earth where healing happens not because someone worked for it, but because no one got in the way. No pulling, no pruning, just space and time, and something begins to bloom. In the backfields of an old monastery, There was once a small clearing no one visited, too rocky for planting, too uneven for walking. The monks tended the other gardens with rakes, buckets, watering jars, but this place they left untouched. And yet, year after year, flowers bloomed, not the kind you see in markets, not arranged, not ordered, but wild, brilliant, free. Some curved toward the sun, some leaned into shade, some lived only a single morning, then returned to the soil without complaint. One evening, a young monk wandered past the edge of the tended grounds. He sat down beside a crooked patch of violet petals and whispered, "No one planted you." The flower did not respond. It only swayed. The monk returned the next evening, and the next, and slowly he stopped asking why things grew there. He stopped needing the answer. He simply came to sit and let himself be surrounded by something that didn't need to be explained. You've spent a long time trying to fix what hurts, digging in the dirt of your own mind, measuring progress, asking if it's enough. And maybe some of that was needed. Maybe for a time you needed to pull at weeds. But tonight, what if you stepped outside the garden you've been trying to control? What if you sat in the part of your soul that's never been touched by force? What if healing doesn't mean fixing but allowing? The wildflowers do not bloom by command. They rise when space is made, not when the earth is perfect, but when the pressure lifts. Not when someone tells them to, but when the season whispers, "Now." Let your body listen to that same whisper, not as instruction, but as invitation. You don't have to know what's healing. You don't have to name it. You don't have to measure it in the morning. You just have to be the soil, still, open, present, and let something grow. The young monk never told the others about the wildflowers. He didn't need to, because each time he returned softer, more silence in his step, more air in his breath. He wasn't working on himself. He was resting in the place where no work was needed, and the garden knew. It bloomed more every week. Not to impress, not to reward, but simply because something was watching kindly. That was enough. Some parts of you do not need intervention. They do not need instruction, or reprogramming, or 10,000 steps to become whole. They only need to be left alone long enough to remember how to bloom. And they will, without force, without noise, without your control. Because the truth is, healing doesn't come from doing more. It comes from letting go. Let this be your garden tonight. This breath, this silence, this untended patch of stillness inside your body. No affirmations, no tools, no fixing, just presence and a quiet willingness to let something rise without your help. The monks used to say, the wildest gardens are the most honest, because they don't grow to please. They don't grow to be seen. They grow because the earth allowed them to, and because something sacred remained unbothered. Can you let something sacred in you go unbothered tonight? Can you stop pruning your softness long enough to let it bloom? You don't have to explain your pace. You don't have to track your progress. You don't have to understand your growth to trust it's happening. You are not a project. You are a meadow. You are not a timeline. You are a season, and not all seasons are loud. There is no single flower in the field that apologizes for blooming late. None of them asks if they are enough. They rise when they are ready. They open when the sky feels soft enough, and then they give beauty without knowing it. Maybe you've worked hard to heal. Maybe you've exhausted yourself trying to be better. But tonight you are allowed to stop. Not because the work is done, but because this moment asks for no more work. Only rest, only breath, only a little space for the wildflowers to grow. Let your body be untended. Let your thoughts grow soft. Let your heart lie fallow for just one night, and see what rises on its own. Maybe peace, maybe nothing. But even nothing is part of the garden. Even stillness is sacred growth. If there is sorrow in you, let it lie down in the soil. If there is joy, let it rise like sun through the leaves. But do not demand meaning. Do not harvest too soon. You are still growing, even when you are still, especially when you are still. Somewhere, a wildflower blooms tonight where no one thought beauty would return. Let that be your symbol. Let that be your softness. Let that be your permission to rest in your own untended field. And without needing to see it yet, trust this. Something in you is already blooming. Even now, even here, even in sleep. There are things that have been said about you that were never true. Words that clung to your name like smoke in fabric. Moments where you were misunderstood. Times you were judged before you even had a chance to speak. And some of those words still live in the folds of your memory. But the wind remembers none of it. It moves freely through the temples of the world, past the flags, past the walls, carrying everything but keeping nothing. It touches your face and asks no questions. It does not care what they said. It only knows that you are here now, still breathing, still becoming, still worthy. There is a small monastery at the edge of a hill where prayer flags dance all day in the wind. Blue, red, yellow, green, each square of cloth carrying blessings sewn by hand. Some have faded, some are torn, some bear words that are no longer legible. And yet they flutter just the same, because the wind does not read them. It only moves through them. It lifts what has been left behind and continues on. You are allowed to be lifted too, not because your past is erased, but because it no longer needs to be proven. What others said about you, that was never your truth. Their misunderstanding is not your identity. Their projection is not your story. You've likely spent years trying to unstick certain words from your skin. Maybe you've tried to prove you are not what they claimed, tried to become what would finally silence them. But the silence never came, did it? Because no matter how far you go, the mind remembers the echo, even long after the voices are gone. That's why tonight we turn to the wind, not to fight, but to forgive. Forgiveness is not always for the ones who hurt you. Sometimes it's for the version of you that believed them. The you who flinched when called weak. The you who tried to become small just to stay safe. The you who doubted your worth because someone else couldn't see it. Let that version be held tonight. Let them come into the temple of breath and be told softly, that was never who you were. There was once a monk who was accused of stealing. No trial, no inquiry. Just whispers in the corridor, nods behind closed doors. The truth was never asked, and the monk, he did not defend himself. He swept the temple floors. He prepared the morning tea. He bowed before the Buddha with the same quiet as before. Another monk asked, "Why do you remain silent when your name has been stained?" And the accused replied, "If the wind does not hold onto the dust, why should I?" You are not here to hold dust. You are here to breathe, to live, to sleep without armor. And the wind outside your window tonight moves through the same air that passed through that old monastery. Let it carry what they said. Let it lift the weight you were never meant to bear. Let the breath in now like wind through cloth. No resistance, no memory. Let it touch your chest without reopening the wounds. Let it rise without carrying judgment. You are not here to explain. You are here to exhale. There are moments in life when the echo of judgment feels louder than the truth, when someone else's story about you feels more real than your own knowing. But tonight, let that knowing return, not in defense, not in proof, but in peace. You were never meant to carry every opinion like a verdict. You were never meant to bend your shape to fit someone else's lens. Let the wind return you now to the version of yourself that came before explanation, before reputation, before misunderstanding. The version that simply existed whole, unapologetic, untouched. There's a reason monks hang flags high above the earth, because prayers, once released, do not need to be controlled. They are meant to fly, to be taken, to be scattered, and returned as silence. Your name is like that too. It is not meant to be clung to, not meant to be defended. It is meant to rise, and rise again, even when spoken wrongly. If others misunderstood you, forgive them, not because they were right, but because you deserve peace more than they deserve punishment. If you misunderstood yourself, if you judged your softness as weakness, your rest as laziness, your silence as absence, forgive that too. You are not broken. You were just tired of trying to hold an identity you never chose. Let it go. Let the wind carry it where it can no longer return. There was once a woman who planted prayer flags after her teacher died. She wrote nothing on them. No names, no mantras, just blank squares of fabric left to the wind. When asked why, she smiled and said, "He knew what I couldn't say. The wind will say it for me." You don't need to explain your healing. You don't need to declare your growth. The breath will speak. The silence will carry it. The peace in your bones will become your voice. You do not need to correct the past. You only need to live beyond it. Let your breath now be a soft letting go. Let it drift out like a whisper you no longer need to control. Let what was said about you lose its shape. Let what was never true lose its weight. Let the wind move through the temple of your body as freely as it always wanted to. And if tomorrow someone still misnames you, still tries to define your story through the lens of their own, remember this. The wind does not argue. It moves. It does not pause to explain. It flows. It carries everything and keeps none of it. So let yourself be wind tonight. Let the judgment pass through. Let your breath rise light again. Let your spirit move without apology. Let sleep come without explanation. And know this. You are not what they said. You never were. There is a moment in the life of the soul when identity feels too heavy. Not because it is false, but because it has finished its work. The name, the role, the story you've wrapped around your breath for so long, it begins to loosen, and you realize you can let it fall. There was once a monk who wandered far from his temple, carrying nothing but a bowl and a name he had long since outgrown. He had been praised. He had been judged. He had been called teacher, student, holy, flawed. But inside, he only felt one thing: weight. And so, one morning at the river, he knelt down to drink. The water was still, no ripples, no demands, and as he looked at his reflection, he did not see a monk, or a man, or a title. He saw movement. He saw breath. He saw something he didn't need to describe. So he folded his robes, set them gently beside the stream, and walked into the trees. No name, no role, no burden, just being. You are not your name. You are not your label. You are not your past. You are not the wound you survived, nor the mask you wore to make it bearable. You are not your achievement. You are not your shame. You are not what they celebrated or what they misunderstood. You are what watches, what breathes beneath every version, what remains when the roles grow quiet. The monk walked for days. No one asked who he was. He asked no one else either. He slept beside stones, ate from the land, listened to the sky. He did not feel lost. He felt lighter, not because he had answers, but because he no longer needed to hold a shape for the world. And in that absence grew something deeper than peace. Stillness, not silence. Stillness. You've been many things. The strong one, the quiet one, the broken one, the one who tried, the one who ran. You've gathered names like folded robes, some offered in kindness, some sewn from pain. And maybe it's time to set them down, not to disappear, but to remember who you were before they wrapped you in identity, before you were known as anything but presence. You don't need to declare yourself to be real. You don't need to define yourself to be whole. You don't need to carry every version of you into tonight's sleep. Let them rest. Let them wait by the river. You can return for them later if you need to. But for now, you are allowed to walk without a name. There is something holy in forgetting, not out of loss, but out of release, when you no longer need to remember who you were in order to know what you are. The monk returned to the river many seasons later. His robes were still there, folded neatly on the bank, untouched, unclaimed. He didn't put them back on. He didn't need to, because somewhere between the walking and the weather, he had become something softer than a role, something wider than a name. And still he bowed to the robes, not as if to reclaim them, but to thank them for holding him until he no longer needed to be held that way. You can honor your past without carrying it. You can bless the version of you that fought, that proved, that endured, and still walk forward without dragging their story. You do not have to be what you've always been. You do not have to finish what was started in a moment of pain. The robe can stay folded, the name can rest, and you can breathe as something unnamed. We often think letting go of identity means losing ourselves. But what if it's the opposite? What if shedding identity is the only way to meet who you truly are, the one who needs no introduction, no performance, no title? What if this isn't erasure, but emergence? Let your breath now arrive without expectation. Let it enter you as if you had no history, no resume, no reputation, only this moment, only this inhale, only this presence. That is enough. That is you. There's a story told in temples and forests alike that every soul must one day forget its name in order to become free. Not because names are evil, but because they are small, and the soul is not small. The soul cannot be folded or labeled or filed beneath old memory. The soul is sky. It is wind. It is water that reflects but cannot be held. You are sky. You are wind. You are water. And the robe that was always just a symbol, a layer you can shed when the season calls you into stillness. If tonight feels like that season, answer it, not loudly, just inwardly. Set the old roles down by the river. Let them wait. They will still be there when the world wants names again. But for now, you are allowed to become no one. And in becoming no one, become whole. Sleep does not ask who you were today. It only asks if you are willing to stop being anything for a little while. And you are. You are ready. Let the robes stay folded. Let the river run on. Let the breath soften. Let your name dissolve into silence. And rest as who you were before you were ever called anything at all. There is a sorrow not born of loss but of timing. When you are the first to feel the shift, to see the change, to loosen your grip while the world still clings, it does not feel brave. It feels alone. And yet, something in you knows it's time. High in the arms of an old maple, there once lived a single red-orange leaf. She was not the brightest, not the last, not the most admired, but she was the one who let go first. Not with drama, not with noise, not even with a breeze. She simply uncurled where she touched the branch and began to fall. The others watched. Some held tighter. Some whispered, "Too soon." Some wept. But the leaf she only floated, not to leave, but to return, to soil, to rest, to whatever comes next when the letting go has already begun. There is grief in being the first to surrender, not because it's wrong, but because it's misunderstood. They will say, you gave up. They will say, you moved on too quickly. They will wonder why you stopped holding on when the trees still looked so full. But they don't know what you felt inside your stem. They don't know how tired you were of pretending to stay green, and you don't owe anyone the explanation. Letting go early is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the soft courage to say, "This season in me is closing." Even if no one else is ready, even if the sun still shines on branches that have not yet broken, even if the forest is still filled with the sound of clinging, you may be carrying that kind of sorrow now, the grief that doesn't look dramatic, but still lives behind your eyes, the ache of being the first to feel what others haven't yet admitted, the quiet knowing that something is over, even if no one else has spoken it aloud. That is not isolation. That is awakening. And yes, it can hurt, but it is also holy. Let the breath arrive now without resistance. Let the inhale hold you like the branch once did. Let the exhale begin to loosen you, not because you must fall, but because it's safe to let go. The leaf did not know where she would land, but she trusted gravity more than she trusted fear. She trusted rest more than she trusted holding on just to be seen. And when she touched the earth, there was no applause, no answer, only stillness. And the sound of one season ending in peace. There are moments when grief doesn't shout. It whispers, it sighs. It lets go softly before the frost, before the world sees why. And it's easy to feel alone in that kind of release, to wonder if you've given up too soon, to wonder if staying just a little longer would have made it easier for others to understand. But letting go is not something you do for others to understand. It's something you do when your soul has already moved on. The monks say that wisdom often walks a few steps ahead of comfort, that it feels like solitude only because most are still choosing to hold on. But the leaf that falls first is not broken. It is simply in rhythm with a truth that hasn't ripened in others yet. And sometimes your soul ripens earlier than expected. That, too, is grace. There was once a monk who left the monastery before the others. He had served, he had chanted, he had stayed through countless seasons, but one morning he simply bowed, folded his robes, and walked down the mountain. The others whispered, "Why now? Why leave before the teachings are complete? Why not wait for the next ceremony?" But the monk, he did not explain. He only said, "My roots are calling me to become soil again," and he disappeared into the valley. Years later, a traveler found him tending a silent garden, wild, blooming, alive, not teaching, just being, still serving, still whole, just elsewhere. You are allowed to let go before others understand. You are allowed to soften your grip on something even if it once held you beautifully. You are allowed to release what still looks lovely if your spirit knows it's time. The red-orange leaf was found days later by a young girl walking a forest path. She picked it up and held it close. Not because it was the most perfect, not because it was the most vibrant, but because it had landed in her path at the right time. And sometimes, letting go early allows someone else to pick up what you've released and be comforted by it. Even your falling can become someone else's peace. Let your breath now settle like that leaf. Not crashing, just resting. You do not have to grip the branch tonight. You do not have to rehearse the reason. The season is shifting, and your softness knows how to follow. Letting go is not loud. Sometimes it is simply the quiet decision to trust the fall more than the fear. To trust that where you land is not an end, but a home you just haven't met yet. So tonight, release gently. Let go like a leaf that didn't need the whole tree to approve. Let go like wisdom that whispers before the frost. And rest in the grace of knowing you were the first to let go, not because you were weak, but because you were ready. There is a moment when full becomes too full, not all at once, but slowly drop by drop until something spills. And no one notices until the tray beneath is wet with what you couldn't hold. In an old tea house at the edge of a temple, there was a ritual few remembered. Each morning, before the sun reached the wooden walls, a monk would prepare tea in total silence. No words, no instruction, only movement. A clay cup, a slow pour, steam rising like memory. But always, always the monk poured until the tea spilled gently over the edge, trickling into the shallow wooden tray beneath. It was never rushed, never messy, just enough to remind the watcher, this cup is full. This cup cannot take more. And still, it is beautiful, even in overflow. You've been holding much, not because you wanted to, but because you didn't know you were allowed to stop. You've carried what others dropped. You've caught what no one else could. You've been the strong one, the patient one, the quiet one who nodded while others poured and poured and poured. And somewhere along the way, you stopped noticing how heavy you had become, until it spilled. In tears, in silence, in a weariness, too deep to explain. There is no shame in that spilling, no shame in needing to empty, no shame in saying, I have held too much. Because strength is not how much you carry, it's knowing when to stop. It's knowing when to put the cup down and let it be enough. The monks used to say, an empty cup is still sacred, because it's ready again, because it's honest, because it no longer pretends to hold what it cannot. Let the breath now rise and fall like steam from a poured bowl. Let the shoulders soften like clay in warm hands. Let whatever you've been holding be allowed to spill without apology. No one is measuring you here. No one is waiting for you to catch everything perfectly. The tray beneath you, this stillness, this silence, this night, it was built to catch the overflow. There was once a visitor who came to learn from a master. He spoke endlessly about wisdom, about practice, about effort. The master said nothing, only poured tea into the man's cup until it overflowed onto the table. The visitor cried out, "It's full, you're spilling." The master smiled, "Like your mind, how can I offer you anything if you've already filled it?" Sometimes the offering comes after the letting go, after the tipping, after the breath that says, "No more right now, that is enough." You don't need to keep holding. You don't need to keep listening. You don't need to keep performing as someone who can endlessly contain what was never yours to carry. Let the cup overflow. Let the tray catch it. Let the moment pass without reaching to clean it up. You are not broken. You are full. And now, you're releasing. There is a kind of grace that only arrives after the spill, not the grace of composure, but the grace of release, when nothing more needs to be held, when the silence says, "It's okay now, you don't have to catch this." And that's when healing begins, not with control, but with surrender. The monk in the tea house never wiped the spill. He let it dry on the tray, let the stain become part of the grain. Not because he was careless, but because he understood some marks are meant to remain. They remind us of the moment we stopped pretending to hold more than we could. You've been taught to hold it all together, to nod and smile when you're heavy, to absorb instead of release. But maybe tonight is your quiet rebellion. Not a collapse, just an ungripping, just the hand finally resting beside the cup, not trying to pour, not trying to serve, not trying to contain, just resting. Let the breath come not as a container, but as a stream. Let it pass through you. Let it carry what you never needed to hold. You don't have to be the teacup anymore. You can be the air, and the air holds nothing but movement. There is a teaching about compassion that few talk about, that it includes you too, that you are not meant to carry others at the cost of spilling yourself, that your worth is not measured by how much you hold in. Sometimes the most sacred thing you can do is overflow and let the silence absorb it. If there is grief in you, let it come. If there is anger, Let it soften as it touches the wooden tray beneath you. Let the moment of too much become the beginning of enough. Let this be the night you stop measuring your peace by your capacity to hold pain. The cup still has value after the spill. In fact, maybe more, because it becomes honest, because it shows you the edge, because it says, "This is where I stop. This is the line. This is where I begin to release." You have a line too, and you are allowed to honor it. You are not the overflow. You are not the mess. You are not the moment it tipped too far. You are the one who stayed, who softened, who let it spill and didn't run. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. Let the breath now be simple. Be slow. Be empty. No control. No holding. Just the sacred hush after the last drop. And when you sleep, may you sleep like the cup no longer brimming, no longer shaking, just resting, just enough. Let everything else drip into the silence. It knows what to do with it. It always has. Not everything needs steering. Not every journey needs control. Some paths carry you, not because you pushed, but because you stopped pushing. And that's when you float. Not aimlessly, but faithfully. Not lost, but held. There was once a small wooden boat kept at the edge of a quiet lake. No oars, no sail. Just the shape of something meant to receive motion, not force it. The monks who visited the lake would sometimes sit inside, feet drawn in, hands open, and let the water move them. Not toward a destination, not to arrive anywhere, but to remember what it feels like to be carried. You've tried to paddle your way through everything, to force peace, to chase stillness, to steer your way into healing like a map could lead you back to yourself. But tonight, what if the path forward is not a path you walk, but a current you surrender to? What if drifting isn't failure but trust? The world teaches us to grip, to calculate, to keep moving. But some rivers will not be forced. Some lakes only open when you are still. Some answers only rise when you stop asking how to get there. The boat never argues with the water. It never says, "This is too slow." It never demands a destination. It allows, and in allowing, it moves. You may not know what's next. You may feel adrift in something too wide for your mind to manage. But that does not mean you are without direction. It means you're being carried by something deeper than decision. And the stillness beneath you is not empty. It is knowing. Let the breath become your boat now. Let the body loosen. Let the shoulders fall like oars dropped into still water. There is nothing to steer tonight, nothing to chase, nothing to fix. Only the slow drift into trust. There was once a monk who struggled with meditation. He fought to quiet his thoughts. He tried to empty his mind. He pushed harder each time silence escaped him. One evening, his teacher led him to the lake, showed him the boat, and said only, "Sit, let the lake do the work." So the monk sat. At first, he fidgeted, then he grew still. And when he stopped trying to reach silence, it came, not as reward, but as water, moving gently beneath him, not asking him to earn it. You are not here to earn peace. You are here to remember that you are already floating, that your soul knows the way even when your mind does not, that you are carried even when you feel directionless. And that surrender is not giving up, it's finally giving in to something kind. There is a grace in not knowing where you're going and going anyway. Not because you're lost, but because something deeper is guiding you through stillness, not speed. The boat eventually drifts to shore, not because it aimed, not because it forced direction, but because the water knew, and that's the wisdom you're being offered now, that you don't always have to know, you don't always have to lead, you don't always have to be the one with the plan, the answer, the control. You can be the one who lets go and still arrives. We live in a world that worships movement, that tells you to hustle, to paddle harder, to get there first. But some of the most sacred arrivals happen in quiet, in trust, in the soft letting go of the need to steer. Let this moment be your boat. Let the breath be your lake. Each inhale, a gentle lift. Each exhale, a drift toward peace. You are not falling behind. You are not floating aimlessly. You are being held by something vast and tender, something that does not ask you to try so hard. If your mind stirs, don't fight it. Let the thoughts drift, like reflections on water. They do not need to be solved, only seen, then released. You are not the ripples. You are the one being carried beneath them. There's a story the monks tell of a young man who tied a rope to his boat and tried to steer the lake. He ended up circling the same place over and over. Exhausted, he finally cut the rope, laid down in the hull, and let go. By morning, he had reached the far shore, and he never picked up a paddle again. Maybe this is your morning, or maybe just the beginning of your drift. Either way, you don't have to fight the water. You don't have to explain your surrender. You only have to trust that what holds you knows where you're going, even if you don't. Let your breath now settle like wood on water. Let your thoughts soften like light across the lake. Let your sleep arrive, not because you chased it, but because you stopped chasing everything else. You are already afloat. You are already enough. You are already being carried. Let go of the need to steer, and let trust do what it has always wanted to do, bring you home. Not all fire destroys. Not all heat consumes. Some flames glow gently, steady, low, enduring. They do not scream. They do not scorch. But they warm what matters. And that too is power. In the back garden of a snow-covered monastery, there was a pit of coals that never fully went out. Even in the deepest winter, beneath blankets of white, the monks would place their hands just above the stones and feel the warmth still breathing there. No flames, no smoke, just a quiet ember that had forgotten how to die. You've been told that passion must be loud. That fire means urgency. That power means eruption. But there is another kind of fire, the kind that stays, the kind that glows beneath the surface, the kind that does not burn through your life but lights it gently. You may not feel blazing, you may not feel fierce, but that doesn't mean your fire is gone. It may simply be resting beneath the ashes, beneath the snow, beneath the exhaustion of trying to burn bright for too long. Tonight, you are invited to become a quieter flame, not for others, but for yourself. Let the breath rise like smoke from a settled ember. No rush, no roar, just presence. Let the heat return without needing to be seen. Let it find you in stillness. There was once a young monk who feared his flame was dying. "I no longer feel passion," he said. "My prayers are quiet. My steps are slow. My heart feels dim." The teacher smiled and placed a single coal into the monk's hands. "Does it burn you?" he asked. The monk shook his head. "Number. But do you feel the warmth?" The monk nodded, slowly. "Then it is still enough. You don't need to burn brightly to be real. You don't need to glow for others to count as light. You are not less powerful because you are quiet. You are not less sacred because you are soft. You are simply resting in the kind of fire that doesn't destroy. And that is holy. There is a time when the soul grows tired of proving its heat, tired of the sparks, tired of the fuel, tired of trying to be seen as burning when all it wants is to glow quietly and rest. And that is not failure. That is wisdom, the shift from flare to ember, from performance to presence. The monks say that the most powerful flame is the one that outlasts the wind, not because it fought harder, but because it burned lower. You do not need to burn your way forward. You do not need to sacrifice yourself to stay bright. You only need to remain lit in a way that's kind to your own soul. The coals in the garden lasted through winter, because no one demanded they burn for beauty. They were not watched. They were not forced. They were simply trusted to do what fire does when given time and space. They gave warmth to hands that never rushed them, and even under snow, they remained. If something in you feels small tonight, if your light feels hidden, your passion distant, your energy quiet, it is not the end. It is the beginning of something deeper. A warmth that will not leave. A fire that will not consume. Only comfort. Only glow. Only enough. Let the breath now settle like ash. Let the body lean in like hands toward heat. No need to reach higher. No need to burn brighter. Just feel what remains beneath the surface. It is still here, and it is still you. There is a kind of passion that does not shout. It waits. It warms. It returns when the time is right. You are not cold. You are conserving. You are not lost. You are resting in the glow of your own quiet flame. There will be days when you burn again naturally, easily, without fear. But tonight is not that night, and it doesn't need to be. Tonight is for soft heat, for low light, for the kind of flame that flickers without fading. So let sleep come like snow on stone. Let the silence hold you like coals in darkness. You are not fading. You are glowing in stillness, and that is more than enough. There is a kind of strength that doesn't rise. It doesn't clench its fists. It doesn't shout back. It doesn't prove. It just stays, still, present, unmoved. And in that stillness, something louder than fear begins to speak. There was once a monk who sat every morning in the center of the temple courtyard before the sun had touched the stones. And each day, as the city beyond the gates woke into its chaos, the monk remained. Traders yelled, horses stamped, children fought. A drumbeat of noise echoed down the walls. But the monk didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't breathe harder. He simply sat, a figure inside the swirl, not because he didn't hear it, but because he had stopped needing to respond. You don't have to respond to everything that calls your name. You don't have to answer every voice that tries to pull you back into the storm. You don't have to explain yourself to your fears. Some things grow quieter not when they're confronted, but when they're no longer fed. Fear is loud. It has to be. Because it lives off your reaction. It survives on your flinch, your explanation, your attempt to calm it down. But when you go still, truly still, it loses its fuel, and eventually it fades. Let the breath now be that stillness. Let the inhale rise like the beginning of a bell. Let the exhale fall like a sound that disappears without needing to echo. You are not here to fight. You are here to remember that silence is not weakness. It is power that has nothing left to prove. The monk was once asked, "How do you sit through such noise?" He smiled and said, "I do not silence the world. I only stop handing it my attention." Fear is not destroyed by shouting. It's undone by being ignored, not with force, but with understanding. "I see you," you say to it, "but I do not obey you." And that is enough. Maybe you've been surrounded by voices lately, voices within, voices from the past, voices from outside that try to convince you you're not ready, not safe, not enough. Let those voices spin. Let them swirl like wind. You don't need to answer. You only need to sit, to stay, to breathe, and the wind will pass. There is no need to silence the storm to find peace. You only need to stop stepping into it. Let it pass. Let the noise belong to itself. Let the chaos run out of energy while you remain a quiet witness. The monks say the bell only rings because it allows itself to be still. It does not run toward sound. It waits. It allows vibration to pass through it, but it does not chase noise. You are allowed to be like that, still, ringing, unafraid. There is an ancient koan, Why do you speak when silence would serve? But tonight, a better question. Why do you fear when stillness is already holding you? Some things cannot follow you into silence. They lose shape without your worry. They dissolve when you don't feed them with thought. Fear is not strong. It is just noisy. And you are no longer listening. Return to the breath now, not to fix it, not to use it, but to feel it. A gentle cycle like a lantern's flicker. Inhale like the temple walls rising around you. Exhale like the world outside falling away. This moment asks nothing of you, and in asking nothing, it gives you everything. The monk still sits each morning, in the minds of those who remember him, not because he became famous, but because he became free. He taught no sermons, he gave no answers. He only demonstrated what it means to no longer be disturbed by what is not yours to carry. And that, in a noisy world, is a sacred transmission. So tonight, may you sit too inwardly, softly, without defense. Let the shouting world continue. Let it wear itself out. You do not need to chase peace. You only need to stop chasing fear. It cannot follow you here. And when the breath fades into sleep, when the thoughts grow heavy and start to fall away, know this: you have already won, not by fighting, but by becoming the silence that fear cannot reach. And now, you rest. You are not here to defend yourself tonight, not to fix the past or brace for another wound, not to prepare your reply or justify the gentleness you carry. You are here to set it all down, to become the stillness that cannot be provoked, because not everything needs your answer, and not everything deserves your reaction. There is a story whispered through the stone halls of old temples, of a monk who stood day after day before an ancient wall, weathered, unmoving, cracked and coated in moss. He would bring his anger there, his fear, his confusion. He would yell at the wall, weep before it, beg it for answers. But the wall never moved, never shouted back, never crumbled. It simply received and remained. And over time, the monk grew quiet too, because he realized something. It was never the wall that needed changing. It was the storm inside him that needed to stop needing a target. Some people yell because silence threatens them. They want to be echoed, matched, resisted, not heard, but mirrored. But you are not a mirror for someone else's pain. You are not the echo for someone else's fear. You are the wall softened by moss, aged by time, untouched by projection. Let your breath tonight be that still wall, not hard, not cold, just unshakable, present. Inhale, feel the shape of your chest like stone warmed by sun. Exhale, let every tension roll down your back like a voice that no longer reaches you. This silence is not avoidance, it is wisdom. There was a time, perhaps, when you defended every wound, when you raised your voice because your peace felt too quiet, too easily stolen. But no one can take what you no longer protect. Peace doesn't need a shield, only stillness, only trust. The monks say that the moss on the wall is not weakness. It is proof that it has seen every season and never needed to fight one. And you too can let things grow on you without letting them define you. You too can stop answering to pain that was never yours. Maybe someone once threw words at your softness like stones at glass, and you believed you had to break or harden. But there is another way. To remain intact without needing to shatter. To be quiet without being small. To be soft without being sorry. Let the echoes of others pass through you now. No need to hold them. No need to reply. Let every argument dissolve. Let every imaginary battle lose its meaning. The only war is the one you agree to fight. You don't have to anymore. You've carried so many shields, built so many stories around what someone once said or didn't say or should have known. But a wall does not carry memory. It does not keep score. It simply stays. That is enough. peace is not passive, it's powerful. To not push back is not to be weak, it is to be free. Free from reflex, free from needing to be right, free from the illusion that reaction proves identity. You do not have to explain your calm, you only have to live in it. The monk eventually stopped visiting the wall, not because he no longer needed it, but because he had become it. He had become the place where emotion could land without being returned. And that is the rarest kind of power, the kind that transforms you into sanctuary. So let this breath now be your temple. Let this silence be your reply to every imagined enemy, to every voice that wanted a reaction. Say nothing. Offer stillness. Offer space. Let moss grow where once there was reaction. Let softness rise where once there was defense. Let peace bloom where once you braced for harm. You are not the war. You are not the wound. You are not the one who must push back just to prove you exist. You are here, and that is enough. Some walls hold up temples, some walls hold back floods, and some walls, like you tonight, hold a sacred truth, that what does not resist cannot be broken. So rest now, like stone in moonlight, like moss on the north side of a silent hall, like someone who no longer needs to meet force with force. Let the world go on, let the winds rise and fall. You are not moved, you are not afraid, you are still. You've spent so long trying to get into peace, into worth, into the feeling of finally being allowed, as if peace was behind something, beyond something, protected by a gate you never seemed to have the key for. But what if there was never a gate at all? What if the wall was imagined? What if the door was open? What if freedom wasn't something you earn, but something you remember? Look around you tonight, not with your eyes, but with your breath. This stillness, it doesn't ask for effort. It doesn't test your worth. It only receives you. And not because you did something right, but because you finally stopped running, because you finally stood still long enough to notice you were never locked out. There is a story, a simple one, passed like wind between temple windows, of a traveler, worn, tired, carrying too many reasons for why they didn't belong. The traveler walked for years, over mountains of guilt, across deserts of doubt, through forests of punishment and pride, always looking for the gate, the one the old monks had spoken of, the gate to peace, the gate to rest, the gate to the place beyond shame. But every time they thought they found it, it would vanish, or seem farther than before, until one night, under a moon that didn't care about their past, they stopped walking. They stood in a field of silence, emptied of reasons, too tired to try, and they looked around, and in that soft moonlight, they saw it a wooden gate, weathered, gentle, and completely open. No lock, no guard, not even a door to swing, just space, just a quiet invitation they had been too busy to notice before. They laughed, not from joy, but from relief, from exhaustion, from the strange sorrow of realizing they had never been outside it at all. They had only been facing the wrong way. Sometimes, the gate you seek is not ahead, but behind. Sometimes, peace is not a place you reach, but a place you return to once your illusions of distance collapse. So many of your beliefs are fences you inherited. So many of your fears are gates that only exist if you believe in them. But tonight, under the moonlight of your breath, you begin to see clearly. There is no lock. There never was. You've waited so long for someone to let you in, to tell you that you've done enough, that you're clean enough, clear enough, forgiven enough, worthy enough. But liberation never came from the outside. It is not something another hand gives you. It is what happens when your own grip softens. Close your eyes now, just a little. Feel the gate in your chest. the one that tightens when you feel unworthy, the one that closes when you remember the things no one else knows you carry. Inhale into that place, and on the exhale, imagine it gently opening, not wide, not with drama, just enough for light to touch it, just enough for you to realize it was never sealed shut. It was only held by the idea that you needed to suffer first. You don't. Some gates are imagined not because we're foolish, but because we were taught that we weren't allowed to rest until we'd earned it. And so we became prisoners in wide-open fields. We learned to wear chains, even in meadows. But tonight, the lock melts, the shame loosens, and you return to the truth that was always waiting. You are not outside your peace. You are standing in it. You always have been. The gate doesn't care how long it took. It doesn't ask why you wandered. It doesn't judge the path you took to get here. It just opens, or rather, it remains open, as it always was. Let the symbol carry you now, a wooden gate, worn by seasons, paint peeling, a single stone path leading through it. The moon rests overhead, not bright, but soft, not cold, but distant and kind. You're barefoot, you're quiet. You don't know why you stopped walking, but something told you. Look again, and when you do, there it is, not just open, but welcoming, not just still, but alive with the silence of everything you tried to earn, but always already had. There is nothing to force, no lesson to pass, no performance to give. You are no longer applying for belonging. You are resting inside it. There is something sacred about not needing to push. Let the breath carry you. Let the stillness remind you how light it feels to no longer beg for access to your own soul. You belong to yourself, and that self was never locked out of peace. Sometimes we keep walking not because we haven't arrived, but because we don't believe arrival can feel this simple. But tonight, let simplicity win. Let ease arrive. Let the long hallway of your trying end here. Let the gate be a beginning not of effort, but of remembering. You are not too late, not too much, not too wounded. You are exactly on time for a peace that never closed its arms to you. Even when you turned away, even when you doubted, it remained. And now, as your eyes grow heavier, as the breath softens even more, imagine stepping through, not with legs, with presence, with surrender. You don't need to understand it. You only need to allow it. You are here, and that is enough. The monks say, enlightenment is not a path. It is the place you stood before you forgot. And tonight, you remember. Not through thinking, but through stillness. Not through reaching, but through being still enough to see what was always open. No more knocking, no more waiting for permission, no more blaming yourself for the time it took to arrive. The gate was never closed, and you were never outside it. You simply walked in circles until the silence whispered, "Look again." There is a kind of glow that does not wait to be witnessed. It does not shine to be praised, nor flicker for recognition. It simply lives, in quiet defiance of the darkness around it. Tonight, that light is you. Welcome again to this room without noise, this temple without crowd, this stillness that does not need a reason. The world has asked so many things from you, but this moment asks nothing. It only invites. You've spent so much time trying to be seen, to be enough in someone's eyes, to prove your worth by how bright you burned and how many noticed. But here, you don't have to shine for anyone. You shine because you are. Because you were lit from something eternal. Because your glow is not conditional, not earned, not measured, not transactional, sacred, silent, and enough. There is a story whispered in a forgotten village in the northern valleys, where winters arrive like monks, soft, silent, unrelenting. In one house, a widow lived alone. Her days were simple, her presence quiet. She had once raised a family, but now the rooms were empty. The chairs still sat around the table, but no voices came. And still, every evening, just as the sky turned from ash to ink, she would light a single oil lamp. She placed it on the low wooden table in the very center of the room. She would not sit near it. She did not read by its light. She did not pray before it. She simply lit it and left it burning until morning. A visitor once asked her, "Why do you light the lamp when no one is here to see it?" She smiled, not with her mouth, but with her breath, and she said, "Because this room still matters, even when it is empty, and so do I. You are that lamp, you are that room, you are the one who keeps glowing even when no one applauds. And that is the most sacred kind of light. You have lit yourself again and again in the silence. When no one clapped, when no one thanked you, when no one even noticed. And still, you rose, you breathed, you gave. You were the warmth in someone else's winter without ever asking for summer in return. And tonight, we remember that. Not to seek praise, but to return to your quiet truth. You matter, even when unseen, especially when unseen. There is a peace that comes only in the absence of eyes. When the spotlight leaves and the crowd fades, what remains? You as you are. You as you've always been, without adjustment, without display, and that you is more than worthy of love. Let the breath slow here. Let the body settle. You are not in a performance. You are not in a trial. You are not here to be measured. You are the glow in the room where no one claps and still the warmth spreads. Sometimes, the world teaches us that value must be earned through output, visibility, achievement. But what if your value was already whole before you ever spoke a word? What if being is enough? What if just by existing, you are already holy? Picture the room now. Stone walls, a low window, a table smooth with age, and in the center, a small clay lamp. The flame barely moves, but it lives, and it changes the room not with brightness, but with presence. There is no one to see it, and still, it glows. That is you, even in your loneliest hours, even when your gifts go unnoticed, even when you think you've disappeared. You are still radiating something eternal. Let that settle, not as praise, but as knowing. You have always been the lamp, and the room was never truly empty, because you were in it. And that is enough. There is a kind of healing that happens not from adding light, but from seeing that it was never gone. You didn't lose your worth. You only forgot to feel it without needing someone else's eyes. Tonight, you are being seen by something deeper, not by people, but by presence, by the part of you that never stopped believing in your glow, the part that whispers, "I still see you, even here, even now." And maybe, just maybe, you're ready to believe that again, that even if the room stays quiet, even if the applause never comes, even if no one remembers what you gave, you still matter. Some of the most powerful lights in the world exist in silence. The moon never speaks, but it pulls the oceans. The stars are ancient and distant, but we look to them to guide us home. Your quiet is not emptiness, it is sacred. Your solitude is not lack, it is peace. You don't need to turn yourself up to be seen. You don't need to explain yourself to be loved. You don't need to earn presence. You already are it. Breathe with that. Stay right here. Let the need to be impressive fall off your shoulders. Let the desire to prove melt from your skin. You are not here to perform your worth. You are here to remember it. And if you've never been told, you shine gently. You soften spaces. You are warmth, even when the world is cold. Your light doesn't need to be bright, only true. And it is. It always has been. Let that room live in you now. That still, quiet space with one lamp. No audience, no mirror, no judgment, just a soft glow and a body that finally lets go. The room doesn't need to be full for you to feel full. The light doesn't need witnesses to exist, and you don't need the world to tell you what you already are. You are the lamp. You can rest now, not because you're done, not because it's perfect, but because you don't have to try so hard to matter anymore. You already do. And now, the night deepens, the room softens, and your breath becomes the only sound. The lamp stays lit, you stay whole, even in stillness, even in silence, especially in silence. Not for proof, not for praise, but because it is yours and because it is enough. Your light was never meant to prove anything. It was always a blessing you forgot you carried. And now, you remember. There are some things you never spoke aloud, some prayers that only your spine knew, some forgiveness you asked for without words, but the floor remembers. Welcome back, quietly, to the temple that never locked its doors, to the hush that holds more truth than noise ever could. You are not entering a story. You are returning to a memory that has been waiting for you, not to fix you, not to instruct, only to reflect what you've never lost. The quiet reverence of your own unseen devotion. If you close your eyes and breathe just once more, you can almost feel it beneath you. A warm wooden floor, smooth from years of footsteps, soft from decades of kneeling. You don't know how long it's been here, only that it has held more than feet. It has held souls. They came in silence, not to perform, but to bow, to weep, to surrender. And now you are here. And the floor remembers. This is not a place that forgets. Not the tremble of your hands, not the quiet ache of your spine as you knelt, not knowing what to say, not the nights you came just to breathe through the grief without needing to name it. It remembers. You may think you've wasted time, that the years spent in silent effort, in invisible healing, in unrecognized softness, were lost. But the floor says otherwise. Every unseen bow, every tear you thought no one caught, every inhale you took just to keep going was witnessed by this world in its own sacred way. In the old monastery stories, there is a tale about a young monk who spent 30 winters bowing each dawn in the same empty hall. He was never promoted, never recognized. He spoke little, and no one ever saw what he whispered to the floor each morning. And then, one spring morning, he was gone. No farewell, no trace. Only his sandals left beside the door. When the elder monks cleaned the room, they noticed something. The planks where he knelt every morning, they were lighter, softened, worn smooth from touch. And in that space, a faint scent of warmed cedar rose in the light. The floor had remembered. The floor had kept his prayer. You don't need applause for the room to remember. You don't need to speak for your sincerity to leave a trace. You are being recorded not by cameras, but by presence, by the wood, the wind, the candlelight, by what you gave when no one asked for it, by what you offered even when no one thanked you. So many people walk through life believing that what isn't seen doesn't matter, that if no one notices your healing, it didn't count, that if no one praises your growth, you must still be broken. But the floor has other teachings. You've bowed in ways you don't even remember. When you said sorry to someone who never apologized first. When you stayed soft while life turned sharp. When you breathed instead of reacting. Those were bows. Everyone. And the floor caught each one like petals falling onto still water. Not a single breath was wasted. Not a single step toward peace was invisible to the sacred. Even your sighs have left their mark in the silence. Let yourself believe this now, that you don't have to prove what the room already knows, that you don't have to justify your gentleness, that what you gave, your quiet presence, your unnoticed effort, your private forgiveness was always enough, and it was never lost. Breathe with that. Let it soften you. You've spent so much time trying to show up right, to heal perfectly, to get it all done before the world could criticize. But healing is not a show. It's a kneeling, a returning, a soft surrender to what is still sacred beneath your feet. You can stop proving now. You can stop rushing. There is no ceremony that outranks the one you've already lived. Every quiet act of love you ever gave has already been witnessed by the quiet itself. Picture the candlelight now. It reflects on the floor like moonlight on water, and there, where your knees once met wood, a glow remains. Not because someone praised you, not because you announced your pain, but because the sincerity of your presence made the space sacred. And so we say it now, not to flatter you, but to return you to truth. You are enough, even in silence, especially in silence. You have always mattered in rooms where no one clapped, in moments where only the floor remembered. If there is any guilt left, any belief that your softness was weakness, any fear that your effort wasn't enough, let it melt now. Let the floor carry it. Let the memory of your sincerity rise like incense above the doubt. You are allowed to be honored even if no one ever said thank you. You are allowed to feel proud of your healing even if it happened in the dark. You are allowed to be sacred without needing to explain why. Let this room now become your witness. Let this breath become your bow. And let the stillness rise around you like a memory that was never really lost. The floor beneath you does not need perfection. It only asks for presence, and you have given it, again and again, in small ways, on tired days. You have bowed by staying, by breathing, by letting go without a ceremony, and it remembers. Some nights you may forget how far you've come. You may look at your life and see only what's missing, but tonight, let the floor remind you of everything you've already survived. Let it remind you that nothing was wasted, not even the quiet. There is a warmth beneath you now. It does not rise from fire. It rises from memory. From every moment you showed up when it was hard. From every quiet decision to stay kind when the world wasn't. That warmth is your light returning to you. So, breathe. And if you feel it, bow. In your own way, not as duty, but as reunion, with yourself, with the silence, with the sacred floor that always remembered your knees. And if you rest now, if your eyes grow heavy, know this. You do not need to carry the weight of being seen. You do not need to explain your softness. The room has already held it. The floor has already recorded it. And your breath is already enough. Let the candlelight flicker. Let the memories rise like incense. Let the world go quiet. And in the hush, may you hear what was never gone, a love that has always been here, waiting, soft, still, true, and now you return to it. There is a bell hanging in the morning air, not ringing, not calling, just waiting. And in that waiting, there is peace. You do not always need to speak, to explain, to prove, to summon anything. Tonight, you are allowed to be the sound that stays unspoken. The bell does not need to ring to be sacred. Its stillness is already holy, and so are you. You do not need to announce your growth or shout your healing from the temple steps. You do not need to defend your stillness, nor prove that your silence is wisdom. There is a bell inside you, and tonight, it does not need to be struck. In a temple that has long forgotten time, a bell once hung for generations. Each morning, it would be struck softly at first, then with devotion. It was the signal, the invitation, the breath that started the day. But one morning, a monk approached the bell and simply bowed. He did not raise the mallet. He did not touch the bronze. He just looked at it and let the silence speak instead. And all the others, the ones who had risen early to listen, heard something deeper than sound. They heard nothing, and it was beautiful. Not everything sacred makes noise. Not every awakening is loud. Sometimes, the deepest shift happens when you say nothing, when you stop trying to be understood, when you stop answering every question life throws just to prove you are awake. There is freedom in the pause. There is strength in sacred restraint. You do not owe the world a reply. You do not owe your past an apology. You do not owe your pain another explanation. You are the bell, still whole, still present, even when you remain unstruck. There is a kind of wisdom that only shows itself in restraint. The monk who does not strike the bell is not forgetful. He is aware that the sound is not always needed. There is already a song in the stillness. There is already an answer in the breath you didn't rush. There is already peace in the words you chose not to speak. And so tonight, if you are holding something, an emotion, a memory, a sharp reply that wants to rise like thunder, let it soften. You are allowed to choose silence. Not the silence that suppresses, but the silence that frees, the silence that listens, the silence that heals what noise cannot touch. Do you remember a time you wished someone would listen without giving you their thoughts? Be that presence for yourself now. No commentary, no echo, just space. Breathe and do not fill the pause. Let the bell hang in air. Let the moment pass without your reaction. This is what mastery looks like. Not more words, but fewer. Not more answers, but deeper presence. There is a bell inside you that has been struck too many times by the world, by self-doubt, by the need to perform your worth. But tonight, you do not need to ring. You do not need to prove you are awake, worthy, whole. You are. The old monks say there is one sound deeper than all others, not the gong, not the chant, not even the breath. It is the sound you did not make, the one you held in reverence, the one you bowed to without disturbing it, the sacred restraint that turns silence into scripture. There is a part of you that always thinks you should say more, do more, fix more, heal more. But what if the most powerful moment is the one you let pass untouched? What if the deepest healing is the one you let happen without commentary? What if the holiest bell is the one you didn't strike just to prove you still could? Tonight, you are not being asked to rise. You are being asked to remember that rest is holy, too. You are not being called to speak more truths. You are being called to live inside one. And that truth is simple. You are already here. You are already whole. Even in the silence, especially in the silence, the sun does not rush to light the sky. It glows. The bell does not chase its echo. It waits. The monk does not strike just to be heard. He knows that presence is louder than noise. And you are learning how to be sacred without having to shine for anyone. There is a floor below you that has held every step, a sky above you that has waited for your breath. You are surrounded by things that do not need your explanation. And now, finally, you are learning to be one of them, a quiet presence, a resting bell, a deep part of this world that doesn't need to speak to be real. So close your eyes now, not to escape, but to return, to the place before the sound, to the space between thoughts, to the bell that hangs in your spirit, waiting for nothing, offering everything. The day has said enough. You do not have to add more. Let your final offering be stillness. Let your final prayer be breath. Let your final sound be the one that never needed to be heard at all. There is a robe. It hangs from no shoulder. It touches no skin. It has never been worn. And yet, it is sacred. Not because it was used, but because it was meant for something holy. And that, on its own, was enough. In a small room behind the temple, bathed in a quiet beam of morning sun, there sits a folded robe. No one speaks of it. No one wears it. No one dares assign it a task. It is simply there, a piece of fabric that never touched ceremony, never draped across the shoulders of a master or disciple, and yet it is treated with reverence. Some say it was once prepared for a monk who never arrived. Others say it belonged to no one, stitched by quiet hands as an offering to stillness itself. But here's what remains true. The robe was never claimed, and still it is honored. There is a quiet lesson in this, a whisper of freedom woven into the cloth. You do not need to be used to be useful. You do not need to be worn out to be worthy. You do not need to be touched to be sacred. How many times have you confused your value with your service, with your productivity, with your usefulness to others, with the way they see you, need you, want you? Tonight, that weight can fall away. You are not sacred because you perform. You are not holy because you heal others. You are holy because you exist. The robe was stitched with care, thread by thread, line by line. Even if no hand ever pulled it over a shoulder, its presence changed the room. That is enough. And you, even in your rest, even in your silence, even when you are doing nothing but breathing slowly in the dark, you are changing the room. You are changing the world. Because you are here. There are days when you are worn thin, used, needed, tugged and turned by every voice that calls you back into motion. But there is also this day, this night, this moment, when you are folded gently into rest, not to be forgotten, but to be returned to your original form. Unburdened, untouched, still worthy. You are not a tool. You are not a task. You are not a robe made only for shoulders. You are art. You are intention. You are stillness made visible, and you are allowed to remain untouched. Sometimes we mistake stillness for waste. We look at what has not been used, and we wonder if it had any purpose at all. But the robe knows. The robe has always known. Its purpose was not action. Its purpose was presence. Its sacredness was never in how it was used, but in how it was made. With care, with silence, with the intention that it would belong to the holy. That was enough. Let that be true for you now, even if no one has held you tonight. Even if no one has asked for your voice, your help, your warmth. Even if you feel untouched, you are still sacred. Especially then. Some robes are not meant to be worn. They are meant to be remembered, not for what they gave, but for what they are. Some lives, some seasons, some souls are like that too. You don't have to be seen to be meaningful. You don't have to be praised to be pure. You don't have to be in motion to matter. In the monastery, they still clean the folded robe. They still offer incense in the room where it rests. Not because of what it has done, but because of what it represents. Peace without performance. Holiness without effort. Existence without explanation. Isn't that what you've longed for? To not be needed and still be loved. To not be working and still be worthy. To not be used and still be sacred. Tonight, you are the robe. Not forgotten, not passed over, not wasted, just untouched. And that is holy. There is a deeper kind of love that does not need your usefulness. It does not ask, "What have you done for me?" It simply says, "You are." It does not chase your light. It honors your form, your softness, your stillness, your folded beauty. Let that love find you now. Have you ever wished to be valued even when resting? Have you ever longed for someone to see you, not as what you can give, but as who you already are? That wish is already fulfilled. You are here, and you are still precious, even in the dark, even in the pause, even in the folds of your being that no one else has touched. The sun finds the robe every morning. It doesn't ask what the robe did yesterday. It doesn't measure its usefulness. It simply touches it with light, and the robe glows. That's all. You are not forgotten. You are not delayed. You are not a thing waiting to be useful. You are already glowing, because the light found you, because the breath is still moving through you, because you were made in silence, for silence. So tonight, let all the doing fall away. Let all the proving rest. Let all the worn parts of you slip into softness. You are the robe, still folded, still whole, still sacred, not because of what you did, but because of who you are when you do nothing at all. The monks still bow when they pass the room, not to noise, not to movement, but to quiet, to presence, to purity that needed no audience. And tonight, you are that. No task, no role, no weight, only this, you, in sunlight. Even when no one is watching, you came here to listen, but the silence did not reply. You asked the canyon a question, though you do not remember what it was, and still, you waited for an answer that never came. The rocks held their breath, the stars blinked without message, the wind curled around you, but offered no response, no echo. Not even your name returned. You thought this meant something was wrong, that maybe you did not speak clearly, that maybe the canyon was too far, or maybe you were not worthy of a reply. But tonight, under this sky, you are finally beginning to understand. Not every question was made for echo. Not every ache needs a reply. Not every silence is empty. Some silences are sacred and whole. You have traveled so far carrying questions. Who am I? Why did they leave? What could I have done? You cast these questions like prayers into the chasm of time, expecting answers to come back in familiar voice. But what if the canyon was never meant to echo? What if the silence was the answer? What if peace is not something you get from a reply, but something you become when you stop shouting? A monk once stood on the edge of a great canyon, not to preach, not to seek, but simply to be quiet. His robe was light. His bowl was empty. His footsteps had led him there, but not for any reason he could explain. He looked out and whispered, "If there is no echo, then let there be none." And he bowed, and turned, and left. Nothing called him back, and he did not need it to. You too are allowed to leave the canyon tonight, not because your question was wrong, but because silence is not neglect. It is a different kind of response. Stillness is not absence. It is presence too deep for reply. So rest here, on the edge of what you cannot fix, what you cannot answer, what you cannot make echo, and let that be enough. Let the canyon stay quiet. Let the sky blink without message. Let the wind pass without bringing back your name, because not being echoed does not mean you are not heard, and not being answered does not mean you are not whole. You carry the question, but it no longer weighs the same. Now, you can place it down, like a stone on sacred ground, like a robe folded on warm rock, like a voice that no longer needs to ask. You are not the echo. You are not the canyon. You are not the question. You are the stillness that remains after all sound has gone. And tonight, you are allowed to be quiet. The wind changes direction, but it says nothing. And that, finally, is enough. You sit beside yourself not to speak, but to listen. And when there is nothing left to listen to, you remain. There was a time when your peace depended on what others said back, how they replied, whether they understood. But now, you are older than that, wiser than need, more spacious than echo. You do not need the stars to blink twice to prove you exist. You do not need the canyon to return your words to feel real. You are not the sound. You are the silence in which sound arises and disappears. There is a bowl beside you, still, empty, perfect. No water needs to be poured in it to make it sacred. And so too, your spirit. You were taught to fill, to seek, to chase meaning. But some truths arrive when nothing is said. There is a peace that only comes when you stop asking why. There is a healing that happens not from knowing, but from releasing the need to know. The monk once returned to the canyon years later. He had aged, his hair now silver, his eyes quieter. He stood at the same edge and did not speak. This time there was no question in him, just the rhythm of breath, just the sound of robes brushing stone, just the whisper of moonlight against canyon wall. And when nothing replied, he smiled, because the silence was no longer unfamiliar. It was home. It was himself. So much of your pain, beloved listener, has come from waiting to be answered, to be told why, to be reassured. But the deepest peace asks for none of that. It arrives like the moon with no need to be seen. It touches the canyon without lighting it up. It rests in your heart without proving a point. And now you feel it. Not a shout, not an answer, not even a reply, just presence. Like the floor beneath you that never once told you it was there, but never stopped holding you. Like the breath you forgot you were breathing until now. Like the canyon that never echoed your pain, but carried it anyway in its vast, sacred stillness. And so, you no longer ask. You no longer need to. You no longer chase the echo, because you've remembered. You are not incomplete. You are not unheard. You are not abandoned. You are simply home, in the place where the canyon says nothing back, and the silence finally makes sense. You've been holding something, but it's so quiet, so constant. You forgot it was even there, like a thread pulled tight inside your chest, like a pause that never ended, like a breath that waited and waited and never left. You didn't mean to hold it. You simply didn't let it go. It happened during a moment of fear, or shame, or waiting, or hope. And since then, you've walked softly through the days with your lungs tied in silence, like a monk refusing to disturb the wind. But even silence must breathe. Even the most sacred stillness has rhythm. And now, tonight, with no demand, you begin to notice. You are tired. Not from the walk, but from the holding. There is a breath still inside you. Unfinished. It trembles near your collarbone. It echoes at the back of your throat. It wants to leave. And not because you are wrong or broken, but because it's time. Time to let go of what was never meant to stay. There was once a monk who sat alone in the cold, not to test himself, not to prove strength, but because he had forgotten how to breathe. He had been listening for an answer for so long that he forgot he was still alive. Until one night, the cold bit the air just sharply enough to make his breath visible, and he saw it. For the first time, he saw what he had carried. His breath came out like mist on the night, gentle, holy, shaking slightly but free. He watched it disappear, and in that moment he knew. He had been waiting for his own release. So he closed his eyes and let the next one come, and the next, and the next, until breathing was no longer something he did, but something that was done through him. You too are that monk tonight. You too are sitting in the cold, not because you chose it, but because life brought you here, to this stillness, to this quiet, to this breath, the one you didn't know you were holding. You do not need to exhale all at once. You do not need to force anything. Even the longest held breath can be released in kindness. The tension does not need punishment, it needs patience. So let it go slowly. Let it go like a leaf falling, not like a rope snapping. Let it go like a blessing you forgot you were allowed to receive. You are allowed to exhale. You are allowed to stop waiting. You are allowed to be held by the air instead of holding it in fear. You've done enough. You've proven enough. You've carried enough. And now, you can let go. Let go of the breath that clung to the memory of loss. Let go of the breath that waited for someone to return. Let go of the breath that paused in the middle of grief and never finished the sentence. Let go of the one you held in that moment they said goodbye. Let go of the one you hid when you were told to be strong. Let go of the one you buried when no one else could see your pain. This is not about lungs. This is about the soul. The breath is where memory hides, where worry loops, where fear curls up and waits to be noticed. But not tonight. Tonight you are noticing. You are seeing the shape of your own silence. It looks like fog. It moves like smoke. It leaves like a ghost that was never angry, only tired. There was once a child who held their breath whenever they felt unseen. They thought, if I disappear a little, maybe I'll be loved more. And that belief grew bones, and that breath stayed inside long into adulthood. But love does not respond to your withholding. And tonight, you are learning that peace doesn't come when others see you. It comes when you stop disappearing from yourself. It comes when you exhale. So let this night be the first in many where you breathe because you can, not for anyone, not for control, not for show, just because the breath is yours. The monk in the cold once whispered to a student, "Do not chase enlightenment, just follow your breath until it shows you you were never lost." That is enough. No more questions, no more trying to hold it in, no more proving how calm you can stay. Let the exhale be a form of forgiveness, for the tension, for the survival, for the fear that made you hold on too long. You are safe now, and your breath knows it before your mind does. Feel it soften. Feel it lower your shoulders without asking. Feel it rise through your belly, not your chest. Feel how it leaves you gently, not like abandonment, but like surrender, and then returns without demand, just to hold you again. There is no right way to breathe, only real ways, and yours is real enough. So let it be visible tonight. Let it rise into the cold and vanish like a prayer that no longer needs to be answered. You are not the tension. You are not the grip. You are not the breath you held for years. You are the one who let it go, and in doing so, became free. You expected it to be tighter, to be knotted, sealed, finished, but when you picked it up, the string simply uncurled quietly, softly, like it was never meant to hold. A red thread laid across parchment, not tied, not tangled, just resting, as if it trusted the gift to stay wrapped, even without the bind. As if it believed, connection doesn't need to grip to be real, and neither do you. You have tried so long to tie things down, to hold the ones you love just a little longer, to bind meaning to memories before they vanish, to knot your worth into someone else's hands, to wrap the past in a bow so you could say, this was mine. But life has never stayed knotted. It loosens, it breathes, it slips away, not in cruelty, but in rhythm. You are not being punished. You are being invited to loosen what was never yours to hold, to trust what remains even when nothing is tied. There was once a young monk tasked with wrapping gifts for the village festival, scrolls, offerings, letters of kindness. He folded each one with care, laid them gently on the altar, but he never tied the string. Another monk noticed. He asked, "Why do you leave them loose?" The boy smiled. "Because I trust they'll be opened. And I don't believe love needs knots to stay." That night, the temple wind passed through. Not one scroll blew away. Even the loose ones stayed as if presence, not pressure, was what held them. You've feared that letting go means losing everything. But what if you've mistaken holding for connection? What if the gentlest things never needed knots? What if the bond was never in the tie but in the heart that offered it? The red string was always symbolic. A gesture, a breath of care, not a cage, not a trap, not a proof. And yet you've been trying to keep everything in place. The people, the roles, the stories, winding your own red strings tighter and tighter around days that no longer belong to you. Some of those strings were wrapped in love, but some were born from fear. Fear that if you didn't hold tight, they'd forget you, they'd leave, they'd fall apart. But listen now, softly. They are not forgetting, they are not gone. And even if they are, you remain. You, who tied the string with care. You, who folded your spirit into that moment. You, who gave fully, and now are learning how to release. The gift is still sacred. Even if the string was never tied, there was once a woman who wrote a letter to her teacher but never sealed it. She laid a red thread over the parchment and sent it anyway. When the teacher received it, he wept, not because of the words, but because she had finally trusted that her offering would arrive even unbound. She had learned to send without attachment. You too are allowed to release what you give. Your kindness, your effort, your love. You don't have to track it, or ask for it back, or fear that it means nothing if it doesn't return. The string does not need to be tight to be true. You do not need to close the circle to prove it was whole. Even open ends can be sacred. Even what drifts can bless. Even what is not returned can still be real. Feel the red thread in your life, the ones you've wrapped around. Dreams, people, identities. And ask softly, is this still connection? Or is it control? Is this still care? Or is it clinging? Is this still alive? Or am I holding a memory too long? There is no shame in wanting to hold. Only suffering when you forget that all things move. Let this be your practice now. To love without ropes. To honor without grip. To bless and release. Even your past self, the one who needed knots, was only trying to feel safe. You can let them rest now. You can untie the thread. Look again at the parchment. It has not unraveled. It is not lost. It still holds the message. It still carries the gift. And so do you. You do not need to be wrapped tight to be whole. You do not need to be remembered to have mattered. And you do not need to hold on to what has already changed form. The wind will pass through your life again and again. Let it lift the loose ends. Let it carry some of the strings away. You are not here to preserve everything. You are here to be present. That is enough. The monk who left his scrolls unbound once whispered, "Some things are opened more easily when you let the strings stay loose." That includes your heart, your breath, your story. You are not a knot. You are not the one who must hold it all together. You are the offering. You are the parchment. You are the space that allows what is true to arrive and also to leave. There is no loss in releasing. Only space. Only peace. Only the quiet dignity of having loved without demand. So tonight, let the red string fall open, not to discard but to free, not to forget but to forgive, not to sever but to soften. What matters will stay. What's done will rest. What's real needs no tie to return. And what doesn't return was never meant to be bound. You can sleep now. The gift was given, the thread was laid. The moment is complete. Even if it was never tied, you have walked far. Though you may not feel it, your feet know. Your bones remember. But when you turn around, there is nothing. Only sand, only sky, only silence where your steps once were. The path behind you has vanished. Not by force, not as punishment, but as grace. Because life never meant for you to carry the trail. It only asked you to walk. Somewhere along the way, you began to think your past was proof. Proof that you belonged, proof that you tried, proof that you mattered. You traced your own story like a map, highlighting the pain, underlining the mistakes, folding corners where you thought the real you lived. But now, the map is gone, not torn, just undone. Like footprints wiped clean by wind, there was once a monk who walked across a vast desert. He looked behind him every hour. He wanted to see the shape of his own becoming, but the dunes shifted. The sand filled in. The trail behind him disappeared, grain by grain. He wept once not because he was lost, but because he thought he had left nothing behind. But then he stopped, closed his eyes, listened, and the wind said nothing, and the sand said nothing. And in that silence, he heard the truth. You do not need a past to know who you are. You do not need the echo to trust the voice. You do not need to see where you've been to continue walking. Some paths are made only in the moment, and some vanish to teach you how to live without chains. You've carried so much old stories, old wounds, identities that no longer breathe. But tonight, the wind has done what you could not. It has released the trace of who you thought you had to be, and now you are free. Not from what happened, but from who you became in response to it. You are not the one who was left. You are not the one who failed. You are not the one who always had to be strong. Those were costumes the journey gave you. Necessary, yes. Sacred, perhaps, but not you. You are what remains when those names fall away, when the dust settles, when even memory forgets how sharp it once felt. There is a mercy in vanishing paths. They remind us that healing does not mean rebuilding what broke. It means walking forward without dragging the ruins behind. There was once a pilgrim who kept every pair of shoes he ever wore. He lined them in his hut, dusty, cracked, weathered. He said, "These are my story." But one spring the rains came. The roof collapsed. The shoes were soaked and ruined. The man wailed, "My life is gone." But a monk passing through bowed gently and said, "Your life is not in the shoes, it is in the steps you still have left." And that night, the man stepped barefoot into the mud. He felt the earth for the first time in decades, and he smiled. You too have worn many forms. You've walked as many selves, some proud, some bruised, some still bleeding from names you never chose. But now, let the wind erase the shoes. Let the sand smooth the trail. Let the past become what it was always meant to be finished. You are not what happened to you. You are not the version they remember. You are not a museum for your own suffering. You are breath. You are movement. You are the next step, not the footprint before it. Let the old steps go. They served. They softened. They brought you here. But they do not need to follow. The desert is not cruel for hiding your tracks. It is kind. It knows that if you stare too long behind, you will forget how to see ahead. It knows that some memories become cages if kept too neatly. So it wipes them. So it clears them. So it gifts you the space to begin again. This is not forgetting. This is honoring. You honor the path not by preserving it, but by walking beyond it. Not every pain needs retelling. Not every scar needs explaining. Some need silence. Some need sleep. Some need to vanish like a footprint that was never meant to last. The monk who wept in the dunes once said, "I thought my story was gone, but it was only my need to carry it that had ended." So now, can you loosen your grip? Can you allow what's behind to be unnamed? You do not need to define every chapter to live a sacred life. You do not need to remember every mistake to deserve peace. You do not need to carry every version of you just to prove you changed. What if the most loving thing you could do for your past was to let it rest? Let it fade, let it vanish. Let the wind do its holy work. You are not erasing meaning. You are making space for new meaning to come. A path will appear beneath your feet. It always has. But behind you, only sand, only sky, only the quiet blessing of things that no longer need to be held. So walk now, without burden, without backward eyes, without the heavy title of who I used to be. You are not that anymore. You are the breath in this exact moment. You are the print being made now, not the one already gone. You are free, not because you finished, but because the path behind has vanished. And the world does not need you to look back. You found the ladder early in your walk, leaned gently against an old tree, not a wall, not a roof, not a tower, just a quiet trunk in a clearing of mist. It looked handmade, bamboo and cord, smooth from time, soft from rain, and something in you believed, this must be meant for climbing, because ladders always are, aren't they? You placed your hands on the sides. You lifted one foot, then the other. But the branches above offered no landing. The mist gave no destination, and the tree, steady and silent, held you but did not lead you anywhere. There was no summit, no view, no end, just stillness, just fog, just the sound of your own breath settling into the truth. This ladder was never meant to go up. It was meant to stop you, to humble you, to make you pause where you always tried to rise. You've spent so long climbing, not only ladders but expectations, but roles, but the idea of higher, as if worth waited at the top, as if peace only came from elevation. But some tools were not made for ascent, some ladders were placed only, so you'd notice you're already held right here. There was once a monk tasked with building ladders for the monastery gardens. He made one and leaned it against a fig tree, then sat beneath it. Another monk asked, "Why build what you do not climb?" The man smiled. "To remind myself that not all ladders lead upward. Some simply show me where I am. You do not need to ascend tonight. You do not need to rise. You do not need to prove you're further than you were yesterday. You only need to see what's always been beside you, the tree, the breath, the resting. You have been chasing altitude in your heart, trying to grow out of your pain like vines reach toward the sun. But not everything that heals goes higher. Some things grow inward, downward, deeper. Some truths wait in the soil beneath your stories. And sometimes, what looks like a ladder is really a mirror asking you to look within, not beyond. You thought the climb would take you to answers, to mastery, to some version of yourself that finally feels enough. But what if enough was never at the top? What if enough was the pause on the second rung, where you finally exhaled and realized you've been chasing your own soul into the clouds? And it was always here, at the base, in the breath, in the bark, in the moment you stopped climbing. There was a woman who spent her life collecting ladders, not real ones, but lessons, titles, praise. She stacked them in her heart like stairways to worth. But one day, a child asked her, "Where do all your ladders go?" And she had no answer. They pointed nowhere. They touched no sky. They built no peace. So she burned them, one by one, and sat where the ash met the soil. And she wept, not from loss, but from freedom. She had never needed to rise. She had only needed to return. You are not broken for wanting to grow. You are not wrong for climbing. But tonight, you are being offered something gentler, something that does not reward effort but honors stillness. You are allowed to step down, to sit at the base, to lean back against the tree and let the ladder be what it is. A reminder that sacred things do not always reach. They root. The forest mist thickens. You can no longer see how far you've come. And that, too, is mercy. Because the climb, the proving, was never the point. What matters is here, this breath, this humility, this quiet. The bamboo creaks in the wind, but it holds, not because it lifts you, but because it meets you. It says, there is no above, only within. You've measured yourself by upward motion, by how many rungs you've passed, by how many times you didn't fall. But who would you be if you no longer counted progress in feet and height, but in presence, in stillness, in peace? What if the most sacred path did not begin with a step upward, but a breath inward? You've already arrived at what you thought was waiting at the top. It's here, in this forest, in this fog, in the surrender of not needing to rise. There was once a scroll hung at the monastery entrance. It read, "The summit is not above you, it breathes inside your stillness." Tonight, let that be true for you. Let the mist hide the peaks. Let the ladder rest untouched. Let the tree carry your weight. You are already enough for this moment. You are already whole in your resting, and nothing sacred requires you to climb. The soul is not earned. Peace is not above you. Love is not hiding at the top. They are in your breath. They are in your stillness. They are in the humility of seeing that you need not rise to be worthy. So, sit. Lean back. Let the ladder remain what it always was. A symbol, not of ascent, but of surrender. Let the fog wrap around you like a soft robe. Let the forest hold you without asking. And let the climb go quiet. You were never meant to reach. You were meant to return. To yourself. To stillness. To this moment. Where even the ladder knows you are already home. The flame did not move. It stood in its quiet vessel, a steady wick glowing through dusk. The moth arrived with dusk as well, drawn by something it could not name. Not heat, not light, just something ancient and soft and sacred. But the flame did not flinch, did not dance wildly, did not reach for the moth. It glowed. It remained, and the moth for once did not rush into it. It landed beside the candle's base, rested its trembling wings, and sat in the warmth without touching the fire. No chasing, no burning, no need. You may not know it yet. But this too is your story. You have been the moth fluttering towards something that never asked for your flight. You've burned for those who never turned their gaze, dimmed yourself trying to be seen, gave your glow to people, places, dreams that could not hold it, and still you remained bright. Even in heartbreak, even in silence, even in rooms where no one looked twice, you glowed, because your flame was never lit by their attention. It was lit by something deeper. There was once a young monk who asked the elder, "How do I stop chasing?" The elder held out a lamp and said, "Does this flame run when the moth circles it?" "No," the boy whispered. "Then be like the flame," the elder said. "Still, bright, untouched by longing. You do not need to pursue what does not see you. You do not need to flicker just to be chosen. Let your light be a presence, not a plea. You are not here to beg for reflection. You are here to be your own glow. Somewhere along your walk, you learned that love meant heat, that to be valuable meant to burn. You offered yourself as fire to cold hands that never stayed, and when they left, you blamed the light. You dimmed, you hid. You thought, maybe if I had burned more gently, they would have stayed. But staying was never your responsibility. Glowing was. You are not the flame because others gather. You are the flame because you exist, because something inside you ignited and never left, even through silence, even through neglect, even when the moth flew away before you knew its name. Let the flame inside you be still again, not chasing, not desperate, not hoping to be chosen. Let it be sacred. Let it be enough. There was once a woman who kept lighting candles for someone who never arrived. Each evening, she set the wick, lit the flame, and placed it by the window. One night, she sat beside it and asked, "Why do I keep lighting what no one comes to see?" And the flame whispered, "Because I'm not for them, I'm for you." She wept, not from pain, but from relief. She had forgotten that light does not ask for witnesses, and neither should you. You are not an offering for someone else's recognition. You are a presence that warms the room simply by being in it, even if no one steps closer, even if the moth never returns. The flame in the monastery hall never moves. The monks pass by it each evening. Some bow, some do not. But the flame does not change. It glows with the same grace, the same quiet power, the same still heart that says, "I am what I am," and that is enough. You do not need to burn for what does not stay. You do not need to shrink when someone turns away. You do not need to flicker wildly hoping to be felt. The right ones feel you without fanfare. The right moments arrive without pressure. The moth that does not destroy itself is the one that rests beside you in peace. And even if it doesn't come, you still glow. Because your worth was never based on response. Because your spirit was never waiting to be validated. You are not waiting anymore. You are not reaching anymore. You are not melting just to be remembered. You are here, whole, glowing, a sacred fire in the middle of the night, held by stillness, wrapped in presence, soft in your own certainty. Let the longing go. Let the need dissolve. Let the wings fly without chasing them. You are not the pursuer. You are not the shadow. You are the light, and not the kind that demands, the kind that allows, that welcomes, that glows whether seen or unseen. Let that be enough tonight. Let the flame in you return to stillness. Let it forget the ache to be chosen. Let it remember the joy of simply being. No chasing, no burning, no more flight. Just this quiet candle that does not move, that does not tremble, that does not need. And still it glows. There is a well in the forest that few remember, and even fewer disturb. Not because it is hidden, but because it is quiet. And the world rarely visits what does not call out. It does not flow like rivers. It does not roar like waterfalls. It does not shimmer to catch your attention. It waits, in stillness. And yet, if you come near it at night, you will see something that most spend a lifetime searching for. The moon, not in the sky, but in the water, not glowing through clouds, but resting perfectly on a surface so calm it feels like glass breathing. No tremble, no ripple, just reflection, just truth. The moon above, reflected below, without distortion, without effort. There is a kind of clarity that only stillness can offer, not the stillness of control, not the forced silence of a clenched jaw, but the soft stillness of something that has nothing left to chase. You came here tonight not for answers but for peace. And peace does not come when the mind is racing. It comes when the water stills, when the thoughts rest, when the stirring stops, when the self does not try to make sense of it all. You have rippled your own surface for years, trying to fix, to understand, to prepare, to protect. And in doing so, you could not see what was always there. Your own moon, your own knowing, your own reflection pure and whole beneath the surface. There was once a monk who was asked how to know the truth. He walked the student to a well just like this, dropped a pebble in, the water broke into rings. The reflection disappeared. Right now, the monk said, is thought. Then he waited. The rings slowed, the surface calmed, and the moon returned. This, he whispered, is knowing. You don't have to chase insight. You only need to stop stirring. The truth does not shout. It reflects, and it returns when you stop touching the surface. How often you've disturbed your own peace trying to find it. How often you've questioned your worth, not because you lacked it, but because your thoughts rippled what was already clear. You asked, am I enough? As the rings blurred the moon, you asked, what do they think of me? And the water shimmered with a story that was never real. You asked, why am I not further? And the well gave you an answer, but it was warped by your own longing. Stillness does not mean nothing is happening. It means nothing is interrupting. Stillness is the space where clarity breathes, not because you searched, but because you stopped. There was a woman who spent years meditating in search of insight, but her mind was a storm. She tried mantras, silence, retreat, but one night, on her way to the well, she dropped her lantern. It went out. She sat there, in darkness, too tired to move, too tired to try, and in that stillness, with nothing left to grasp, she saw the moon, not in the sky, but in herself. Perfect, whole, untouched. She had not become enlightened. She had become quiet. You do not need to break through. You only need to become still. Even now, beneath the surface of your thoughts, there is clarity waiting. It is not your job to force it up. It is your invitation to let it rise on its own. Let the surface settle. Let the breath slow. Let the noise dissolve. And just watch, gently, lovingly, softly. You'll see more by not trying. The well has never moved. But it has seen everything. It has reflected the stars, the clouds, the cranes in flight, the storms, the dawn. But always, when the ripples pass, the moon returns. Just like truth, just like peace, you are not broken because you forget your reflection. You are simply stirred, temporarily troubled, momentarily unclear. But what is real is never gone, only waiting. The monks speak of a purity beyond effort, a seeing that happens not with the eyes, but with presence. That purity does not come from holding your breath. It comes from letting go of control. You don't have to correct every thought. You don't have to fix every feeling. Just stop moving the surface. Just rest. Just allow. There is a reflection inside you that has never stopped shining. It has simply waited for the water to calm. And now, it is calm. You do not need to tell the moon to rise. It will. You do not need to force the well to reflect. It does. All you must do is be still enough to see it. Stillness is not lack. Stillness is presence without pressure. The well does not hold the moon. It shows it. The soul does not hold peace. It reveals it. Let your thoughts come, but do not follow. Let your memories float, but do not cling. Let your breath fall into the same rhythm as the leaves and the mist. Let the ripple pass, and you will see what was always waiting, your truth, your light, your reflection, perfectly still beneath the noise. Do not disturb it. Do not explain it. Do not try to hold it. Just be with it. Let the moon rest in your waters. Let the silence speak what words cannot. Let the well in you remain undisturbed. That is enough. That is everything. There is a room you once passed, though you don't remember when. A small room, plain, quiet, walls of wood, floor of stone, and one window made of rice paper and ash wood, set gently into the eastern wall. It faced the moon. No candles lit the room. No incense curled through the air. No prayers echoed inside. Only the window, only the light. And something about that stillness stayed with you. Even now, when your thoughts are loud, you remember it. That quiet square of glow on a paper wall. That gentle wash of silver where nothing asked you to speak or move or be anything more than what you were. You didn't need to open the window. You didn't need to reach for the moon. It was already there. It had already arrived. Sometimes, peace is not something to chase. It's something to notice. And tonight, you are noticing. You have run through many nights searching for calm. You've lit candles. You've begged silence to enter you. You've wrestled your own mind trying to force it still. But this moment is different. Because now, you're not chasing light. You're simply turning toward the window. You do not need to touch the moon to be changed by it. You only need to face it, to allow its presence to fall gently across your skin. To remember that peace does not reward effort, it responds to openness. There was once a monk who spent 3 years in silence. waiting for enlightenment. Each day he sat with his eyes closed, thinking that awakening was something earned through inner war. One evening, he opened his eyes and saw the moonlight spilling through the window. He did not reach for it. He only watched. And in that quiet where nothing was gained and nothing was done, he felt a soft warmth spread through him. He whispered, "I was facing the wrong way." The light had always been there. He had simply been turned toward effort. Tonight, you are not required to reach, only to turn. There is a kind of healing that doesn't need touch, only witness. Let your witnessing be enough. Let the window stay open. Let the moon find you. Let the world go on without needing you to shape it. And just sit here, in your own room, with your own breath, with your own quiet, growing like light on the floor. The moon does not knock. It does not ask. It does not demand. It just arrives. And your only task is to not look away, not from the glow, not from yourself, not from the stillness you've avoided because it does not perform. But stillness was never meant to perform. It was meant to stay, like the moon, like the truth, like the peace that's always been waiting through your window. The night deepens, but the moon does not waver. It rests, untouched, above a world still busy forgetting it exists. And yet, it continues to shine. You've lived many nights trying to fix what is unbroken, trying to chase what could never be caught. But what if tonight is different? What if peace isn't something you earn, but something you let in softly, through the part of you that finally stopped trying? There is nothing to hold here, nothing to grasp. The moonlight will never be caught. It will only be seen, and being seen is enough. So let yourself be seen by the quiet. Let yourself be watched by the calm. Let yourself be lit by something that does not require your success or your struggle or your understanding. Let yourself rest by the window. The monks tell of a time when the great teacher Linji sat in meditation for many days. But it was not effort that brought him peace. It was when he paused, saw the moon through the cracked door, and realized, even in his stillness, he was never alone. There is companionship in watching. There is presence in being with what is here, without needing to change it. You are not failing because you are still healing. You are not behind because your light comes in silence. You are not lost because you no longer want to strive. Sometimes, a paper window, a square of cool moonlight, and the breath that does not push is the greatest truth you'll ever touch. You are already in the room. You are already facing the light. You are already whole in this small act of watching, even if no one else sees it, even if no progress is made, even if no thought can describe it. This is peace, not because it is dramatic, but because it is finally, undeniably, quiet. The window does not need to open wider. The moon does not need to come closer. The healing does not need to arrive faster. Everything is where it should be, and so are you. Let the glow stretch across your hands. Let it rest on your cheek. Let it enter the corners of your heart where striving once lived, and say to yourself softly, I don't have to chase anything tonight. You have tried. You have climbed. You have reached. You have carried the heavy voice that told you peace only comes with proof. But now, you see the lie in that. You see that proof is not peace. Peace is what remains when the proof is no longer needed. You are not what you earn. You are what you allow. And the moonlight needs only one thing from you. That you look, that you be still, that you let yourself be warmed, not by effort, but by presence. Even a paper window knows how to open. Even your chest, long closed by fear, knows how to soften. And even the part of you that forgot how to receive is remembering now how to be touched without being asked to move. There is no better version of you waiting in the next hour. There is only this one, lit by something sacred, held by a room that asks for nothing. and witnessed by a moon that does not need applause to shine. You are enough, just as you are, in the light that asked for no performance. So stay, with the paper window, with the breath, with the knowing that peace never left. You simply weren't facing it, and now you are. No more reaching, no more grasping, no more waiting for peace to prove itself. It's already here, and you are already seen. There is a bell that has not rung in years. It hangs from a wooden beam in a monastery courtyard, where no one rushes and no one explains. The monks pass it each morning in silence. They do not strike it, they do not dust it, they do not speak of it, and yet it remains the center of the place. Not for the sound it makes, but for the stillness it keeps. Some things are holy because they no longer need to speak, and some truths are final not because they conclude, but because they dissolve. This is that moment, the one beyond story, the one beyond name, the one beyond seeking. You have walked a long path, through wind and candlelight, through sorrow and letting go, through teachings that touched your ribs, and stories that stayed long after you listened. And now, there is no more path, only the place where walking stops, not in exhaustion but in reverence, not in arrival but in surrender. You are no longer being guided, you are being returned. Returned to what watched, even as you searched. Returned to what stayed, even when you forgot. Returned to what waited beneath every teaching, quiet, vast, alive, stillness. It is not a practice, not a technique, not a concept. It is what remains when everything else bows. The bell does not need to ring to be sacred, and you do not need to think to know. You do not need to remember to belong. You do not need to speak to be whole. You are already held by the silence you once feared. There was once a monk who asked his teacher, "What is the final teaching?" The teacher took him to the bell at sunrise, pointed to it, and said nothing. For hours they stood there, watching the first light rise over a world that no longer needed sound to be awake. When the monk began to cry, the teacher smiled. "Now you understand." The bell never rang, and yet everything was said. You have heard many things throughout your life, some loud, some wise, some forgotten the moment they were spoken. But this silence that remains when the story ends, this is different. Because it does not offer meaning, it offers rest. It does not explain, it releases. It does not build you up. It lets you be exactly as you are, soft, unwritten, unburdened. You are not the story that brought you here. You are not the questions you carried. You are not the roles you played to be loved. You are what stays when all of that ends. You are the presence that watches the sunrise without needing to name it. You are the stillness that cannot be disturbed. You are the breath that no longer hides in the chest. You are the bell that no longer needs to be struck to know its sound. And now, you are allowed to let it all fall away. The voice, the seeking, the explanations, the versions of you that tried to earn stillness by effort. Stillness was never earned. It was simply noticing what has never left. You don't need to find anything. You've arrived at the place where even arrival disappears, where even identity has nothing left to prove, where even the sacred no longer wears robes. There is nothing to do now, no practice to complete, no insight to record, no lesson to carry home. Only this, a silence that stays, like the bell, like the breath, like the space between each thought. Let yourself be undone. Let yourself be unspoken. Let yourself be held by what asks nothing of you. Let every name you've worn fall to the floor like dust. Let every reason you came here dissolve into mist. You are not your story. You are not the student. You are not the sound. You are the space that remains when the sound is gone. You are the bell at sunrise, untouched but full. You are the silence that stayed after the story, and you no longer need to understand why. The story has ended, but something sacred remains. Not a lesson, not a thought, but a quiet knowing. You are allowed to live softly now. You are allowed to let go again and again. And when no words remain, may you meet the only one that matters. Stillness,